Chapter 1041. Qinning stared at Xiao Bao and looked him up and down. Bone shrinking art? Xiao Bao was a little surprised, but then he smiled. Pretty elder sister knows quite a bit, but the more you know, the less likely you are to live. He had the innocent smile of a child on his face, but his eyes were filled with a cold glow that was like a blade, filled with killing intent. Qinning just stood there calmly, not showing any fear at all. Xiao Bao was stunned again. His eyes revealed an expression like a cat chasing a mouse. He deliberately slowed down his steps and walked over to Qinning. "Young miss, quickly run." Xiao Ru saw Xiao Bao come closer and closer. The steel wire in his hand was pulled taut and her heart was about to jump out. Her voice suddenly stopped. Because suddenly she saw a silver light flash in front of her. It was like a rain of flowers falling from the sky. Tick, tick, tick. The sound of silver needles stabbing into flesh could be heard. Xiao Bao revealed a shocked expression and then let out a long pitiful cry. He fell to the ground and rolled around. Xiao Ru did not know what had happened at all. How did the murderous Xiao Bao suddenly turn into meat on the chopping block? She climbed up from the ground and stared blankly. Qinning smiled as she took a step forward. She stretched out her right foot and gently kicked Xiao Bao's shoulder. Xiao Bao let out an even more pitiful cry. White-eyed wolf, does the feeling of a peacock spreading its tail feel good? She smiled as she looked at Xiao Bao on the ground. There was no sympathy in her eyes at all. Xiao Bao's eyes turned white from the pain. His teeth bit his lips, but he could not say anything. He still looked like a 7 or 8-year-old child, but in Xiao Ru's eyes he was no longer that cute little boy, but rather a sinister little devil. She did not feel pity for him at all. "You white-eyed wolf, we saved you, but you want to kill our young miss. You're not a human, you're a beast." Xiao Ru charged over and forcefully slapped his face. "Kill me. Kill me." Xiao Bao gritted his teeth and squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. "Speak, who are you? Why do you want to harm our young miss?" Xiao Ru shouted. "Xiao Ru, there's no need to ask. He won't tell you even if you ask," Qinning softly said. Her eyes fell onto the teacup. "Strange, I clearly gave him some medicinal tea, so why didn't it have any effect? It's a good thing this peacock spreading tail is very strong." Xiao Ru was stunned for a moment before she reacted. "Young miss, do you know this white-eyed wolf isn't a good person? Did you already give him the medicine? Did you purposely tell him that story about the ingrate?" Qinning giggled and said, "That's right. Could it be that you think this master isn't as good as this disciple? This servant is stupid. This servant should have thought of this earlier. If even I can see it, then eldest miss, you must have seen it long ago. This little ingrate has been lying to us from the beginning, right?" Xiao asked in at Xiao Bao, Xiao Bao, Xiao Bao. Chapter 1042. Xiao Ru was suddenly enlightened. She forcefully patted her head. "This servant is really stupid, I couldn't see through it at all." Qinning then said, "After getting on the carriage, you gave him a lot of candied fruits to eat, but he didn't eat a single one. This made me even more suspicious. What child doesn't like eating candies and snacks? I paid attention to him and found that his eyes were always looking at me. He didn't seem to be drooling over the candies at all. How was that the eyes of a child? So, I knew that this little white-eyed wolf wasn't simple, so I gave him a cup of medicinal tea. I never thought that it wouldn't work, so Zhui Feng was also wronged." Zhui Feng's acupuncture point had been sealed and he couldn't move, but his eyes and ears could still see and hear clearly. When he saw Xiao Bao trying to kill Qinning, he was so anxious that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He was cursing Xiao Ru in his heart. If he could move his hands and feet, the first person he would kill would be that little white-eyed wolf and the second would be Xiao Ru. Even now, he was still using a fierce gaze to stare at Xiao Ru as he panted heavily. But Xiao Ru didn't notice him at all. "Missy, what is this peacock spreading its tail? It's so strong. This servant didn't see you make a move, so how did these needles suddenly land on that little white-eyed wolf's body? Ha ha, that white-eyed wolf turned into a hornet's nest, how interesting." Xiao Ru clapped her hands and laughed. It's a secret for now." Qinning smiled and looked down at Xiao Bao on the ground. Xiao Bao's face turned green and purple. Hearing Qinning and her servant teasing him, his lungs were about to explode from anger. "White-eyed wolf, are you feeling very uncomfortable right now that you can't die even if you want to?" Qinning suddenly said. Xiao Bao bit his lips and did not say a word as he tightly closed his eyes. He really couldn't die even if he wanted to. If he still had strength left in his body, he would definitely bite the poison pill in his mouth to commit suicide, but he didn't even have that bit of strength left. Just now, when the peacock spread its tail, he was not prepared at all. The large cluster of silver needles had pierced his body at least 10 times, and each needle was fed with a special medicine. It made him feel pain, itch, and powerless. He could not live, but he could not die. Although you want my head, I don't want your head. I won't let you die, Qianning slowly said. Xiao Bao suddenly felt his body go numb. He opened his eyes and saw the smile on Qianning's face. He did not know why, but his heart suddenly felt a chill. What are you going to do to me? He struggled to say these words. Of course I won't do anything to you, but wouldn't it be too easy for you to just let you go like this? So, I will give you an unforgettable lesson. In the future, don't pretend to be a child to deceive people. This is not a good habit, understand? Qianning giggled as she spoke in a tone like she was coaxing a child. She even bent down and patted his head. The chill in Xiaobao's heart grew heavier. He had never been afraid of anything, but for some reason, when he saw the young woman's flower-like smile, he suddenly felt that she was terrifying. Xiaobao, be good, don't be afraid. It's not like I'll kill you or scold you, he. Qianning smiled as she stood up. Xiaobao couldn't help shivering again. He stared straight at Qianning and hissed, What exactly do you want? Qianning blinked her eyes. Chapter 1043. Qianning's words stunned Xiaobao and Xiaoru. Xiaoru was very obedient. She quickly followed Qianning's orders to take off Xiaobao's clothes. Xiaobao was completely stunned. He did not dare believe his ears as he stared at Qianning. It wasn't until Xiaoru took off his clothes, revealing his white skin and the wind blew against his chest, that he realized what had happened. God, he would rather die than suffer this kind of humiliation. Qianning calmly looked at him. Seeing his instantly blushing face, she began to chuckle. I can't tell, this little white-eyed wolf still has a bit of shame. Look at how red his face is. It's just taking off your clothes. What is there to be embarrassed about? Could it be that when you came out of your mother's womb, you were also wearing clothes? I'm going to kill you. Xiaobao gritted his teeth. Next time you won't have a chance this time. Qianning gave an uncaring smile. She said to Xiaoru, Keep taking off. Yes, young miss. Xiaoru went to take off his pants again. He was just a little boy, so she had nothing to be embarrassed about, so her actions were very quick. I won't let you go. You. Just wait to die under my hands. I definitely won't let you die comfortably. I will use the most vicious method in the world to torture you, I will. Xiaobao saw Xiaoru's hands taking off his pants and his entire body felt bad. His delicate and cute face turned as red as a purple eggplant and his eyes popped out as he cursed out. Xiaoru, his mouth is dirty. Use a sock to stuff it in his mouth. Qianning said again. Yes, young miss. Xiaoru held back her laughter. She picked up the sock she had just taken off and prepared to stuff it in Xiaobao's mouth. Xiaobao was so angry that his stomach was about to burst. He stared right at Qianning, wishing his eyes could pierce a hole through her face. Qianning smiled at him and then said, Wait a minute, use Zhui Feng's sock. What? Xiaoru revealed a look of confusion. Ooh, the smell is quite strong. Qianning said while holding back her laughter. Zhui Feng's face also turned as red as a purple eggplant. His face turned red as he watched Xiaoru walk beside him. She took off his shoes and then his socks. What kind of smell is this? Zhui Feng, how long has it been since you last washed your feet? Wu, young miss, I'm going to vomit. Xiaoru only took off one of Zhui Feng's socks before she turned her head. Zhui Feng couldn't take it and turned. He really couldn't remember how long it had been since he last washed his feet. He had been brewing medicine in Dr. Zhang's palace and guarding Chu Xiaobai, not to mention his feet. He hadn't even taken a bath. All right, shove it into that ungrateful wolf's mouth. Qianning also held her breath. Xiaobao's eyes almost popped out as he watched Xiaoru walk over with the sock in her hand. He wanted to curse out, but Xiao Tao suddenly shoved the sock into his mouth. Xiaoru's eyes widened as she looked at Xiaobao. Xiaobao's Rao Si Mingfeng said. Long and his Xiaoru Xiaoming in his face. Xiaobao Ling Qianling said Ling's Ling. Xiaoru moved quickly and in the blink of an eye, Xiaobao was only left with his underwear. Xiaobao RS. Although the other side looked like a 7 or 8-year-old boy, Xiaoru still felt a bit embarrassed. This servant? Xiaoru's face turned red. Chapter 1044. After Zhui Feng's acupuncture point was sealed, he had been secretly using his internal energy to open his acupuncture point. As a secret guard, he had a method to open his own acupuncture point. Last time he had been ambushed by Chu Xiaobai, he had opened his own acupuncture point. Seeing Zhui Feng regain his freedom of movement, Qianning and Xiaoru let out a sigh of relief. But then... Xiaoru let out a long cry of surprise as she covered her face with her hands. Although Xiaobao was young, he was still a boy. Seeing a naked body in front of her, she was too embarrassed to look at it. Qinning giggled as she looked at Xiaobao. Xiaobao's mouth was gagged and he couldn't say a word. His body turned cold, especially when he saw Qinning's eyes moving over his body. He wanted to die from shame. But when he saw Qinning's evil expression, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. Damn. She wouldn't want to turn him into a eunuch, right? If it really was like this, he would rather die. Woo 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 woo. He desperately twisted his body as he let out an angry and fearful sound. He heard Qinning say with a faint smile, "Shui Feng, bring the carriage to a place with a lot of people and hang this naked little white-eyed wolf on a tree. Let the people passing by see this white-eyed wolf's naked appearance." What? No. He didn't want it. Xiaobao's eyes suddenly popped out as his eyes filled with fear. Shui Feng was also a bit surprised. According to his intentions, he wanted to take this brat's dog life with a single slash, but seeing that the Empress didn't have any intentions of killing him, he couldn't say it. However, thinking about it, the Empress' move was even worse than taking this brat's life. "Yes, Miss Qin, there is a town in front of us. Can this subordinate hang him on the city gates?" Shui Feng thought about it and then added a sentence. "Very good. Shui Feng, your mind is becoming more and more flexible." Qinning smiled as she praised him. Xiaobao's eyes turned white when he heard this and he almost fainted. "Let me die. Let me die. I would rather die than be humiliated like this." He angrily roared out in his heart. It was a pity that the three people in the carriage could not hear him. A snow-white and smooth body was hung high above the city gate where people were coming and going. Xiaobao had already fainted from anger. He didn't even know how he ended up there. However, when he woke up in a daze, he heard incessant discussions around him. TSK, public morals are degenerating day by day. Nowadays, even children have become shameless. Isn't that so? Look at his fair skin, he doesn't look so poor that he can't even afford clothes. He was doing something bad and was stripped naked by someone? TSK, at such a young age, you think I'm going to be a rapist? You're really a disgrace to your family. When little Bao opened his eyes, he saw that the ground below him was densely packed with human heads. All of them were looking up at him. When the wind blew, his body swayed and his whole body felt cold from head to toe. He suddenly remembered that he had been stripped clean before he fainted. His vision darkened and he almost fainted again. "Help! Put me down." He wanted to scream, but his mouth was stuffed with a sock that was more sour and smellier than a salted fish. He almost vomited when he opened his mouth. Woo woo woo. He struggled and twisted like a fish. Chapter 1045. He saw everyone pointing at him with looks of disdain and ridicule, but no one put him down. He was like a stinky salted fish hanging on the city gate, being watched by everyone. From head to toe, there was not a single thing he could hide from. Those strange gazes made him feel ashamed and he wished he could smash his head against the city gate. He had never encountered such a shameful moment in his life. While he was in this awkward situation where he couldn't live or die, a group of black-clothed men separated the crowd. They walked to the city gate and looked up. "Ah, it's the young master." "God, how did the young master become like this? Quickly put the young master down." The black-clothed men recognized Xiaobao, who was hanging on the city gate, and their expressions all changed. When Xiaobao heard the familiar voice of his subordinate, he felt even more ashamed. His eyes turned white and he fainted again. Whether it was real or fake, in this kind of awkward situation, it was better to faint and not know anything. When Xiaobao woke up again, the poison needles in his body had already been sucked out by his black-clothed subordinates using magnets. He no longer felt itchy and his limbs had regained their strength. It seemed like he had taken the antidote. He moved his body and suddenly sat up on the bed, finding that he had returned to a familiar place. He jumped down from the bed and shook his neck. He took a deep breath. He heard the crackling of his bones and his body that looked like a 7 or 8-year-old child began to change. He slowly became taller and taller, finally turning into a tall and slender young man. His face was like a completely different person. Even if Qinning and Xiaoru saw his face, they would not be able to recognize this enchanting face filled with killing intent. This was the snow-white and cute Xiaobao. He casually grabbed a piece of clothing and put it on, but he could not get rid of the burning feeling on his face. Although everyone had seen his 7 or 8-year-old body, he still found it hard to bear. "Stinky girl, just you wait. If I can let you die a good death, I'll..." He gritted his teeth and gave a fiendish laugh. Shoo, shoo. In the carriage, Qinning suddenly sneezed twice. She looked out the window with a bit of doubt, but there was no wind at all. Xiao Ru quickly took out a cloak and put it on her. Young miss, why did you hang that little white-eyed wolf on the tree? He's so bad, why didn't you just kill him? If you let him go like this, wouldn't that be letting him off too easily? If he comes back to take revenge, what would you do? Xiao Ru rubbed her chin and spoke in a puzzled voice. Zhui Feng's hand that was whipping the carriage slightly paused and his ears perked up. He also couldn't understand this logic. On this point he agreed with Little Ru's idea. It would be better to just directly kill him and end it all. Chapter 1046. Seeing the purple cloud on the shoe, Zhui Feng's pupils suddenly shrank. Purple Heaven Pavilion. He blurted out. Then he nervously looked left and right, his face filled with caution. You also know about the Purple Heaven Pavilion? Qin Ning asked in a curious voice. The first time she heard of this name was from Na Mu Kuo. The scene of the assassin from the Purple Heaven Pavilion sneaking into the guest house was still fresh in her mind. At that time she was hiding on the bed and saw the cold glint of the blade and the threatening killing intent. If it wasn't for Na Mu Kuo arriving in time, her head would have been separated from her body. She had always thought that the person the Purple Heaven Pavilion was looking for was Na Mu Kuo and not her. She never would have thought that she would meet someone from the Purple Heaven Pavilion on the way out of the capital. Moreover, their goal was very clear, they wanted her life. This subordinate knows. This subordinate wants to take a look at this shoe again. Zhui Feng swallowed a mouthful of saliva. His body was still tense and his entire body was in a state of alert. All right. Qin Ning threw Xiao Bao's shoe to Zhui Feng. Zhui Feng held it in his hand and looked at it for a while. The more he looked, the more serious his expression became. This subordinate can conclude that the person who pretended to be a child to assassinate you is an assassin from the Purple Heaven Pavilion. Moreover, his rank is not low, he is not a normal assassin. Zhui Feng said. Oh, how did you see that? Qin Ning asked. This subordinate has only heard that the assassins of the Purple Heaven Pavilion are mysterious and unfathomable, each of them appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Almost no one has ever seen their true faces. The only thing people know is that all of their assassins have a symbol, which is that they will use purple thread to embroider a cloud on an inconspicuous place on their body. Although the pattern of the cloud is similar, it represents the identity and status of the assassin in the pavilion. Look, there are 5 clouds on this shoe while ordinary assassins only have 3. Zhui Feng placed the shoe in front of Qin Ning. Qin Ning took a look and it really was 5 small clouds. She thought back to the purple cloud she saw in the guest house last time and it was 3. You're right. I never thought that this little ingrate would have such a high status even though he looks so young. She thoughtfully said. Zhui Feng said with a serious expression. He shouldn't be young, but he is using a rare bone shrinking technique in the martial arts world. He can shrink his bones to look like a 5 or 6-year-old, but he should be at least 20 years old. 20 years old? Xiao Ru let out a surprised cry and her face was filled with disbelief. She looked at Zhui Feng with a stutter. Is what you said true? Does he look like a child? He looks like a child? Zhui Feng solemnly nodded to her. Although I haven't practiced this bone shrinking technique, I have heard of it. It is completely different from the common bone shrinking techniques in Jianghu. Not only can it shrink the bones and make the body look like a child, it can even make the face return to that of a child. It is said that this technique is called bone shrinking rejuvenation. It has been lost in Jianghu for a long time. I have only heard of it and have never seen it before. It is said that it takes at least 20 years of practice to reach the stage of rejuvenation. So if he started practicing this martial art when he was 5 or 6 years old, then he should be at least 25 or 26 years old now. Xiao Feng. So that means that Xiao Bao is already a... Xiao Ru stuttered, unable to finish. Chapter 1047. Xiao Ru let out a woo sound and almost fainted. A 25 to 26-year-old man. She recalled that she had hugged this man and even held him in her arms to comfort him. She had even openly stripped him of his clothes. Not only had she stripped his clothes, but she had also taken off his pants. She had thought that the other side was a 5 to 6-year-old boy, but who would have thought that the other side was a man? This was simply too embarrassing. For a moment she wanted to find a hole to hide in. Zhui Feng ignored her and turned to look at Qin Ning. Empress, this subordinate has something that I don't know if I should ask? Although there was no one around, Zhui Feng still lowered his voice. Ask. How did you offend the people from the Purple Heaven Pavilion? According to this subordinate's knowledge, although the Purple Heaven Pavilion is a mysterious and unfathomable assassin organization, and they take people's money to eliminate disasters, they do not accept any business. It is said that they have never accepted business from the people of the imperial family, and the assassin who knew the bone-shrinking skill just now was clearly targeting you. His goal was to take your life. This is what this subordinate does not understand. Jue Feng had already understood everything and was even more shocked by the assassination methods of the Purple Heaven Pavilion. It was said that the Purple Heaven Pavilion never failed to kill and it was impossible to guard against. Today he had personally witnessed it. That assassin had used a plan within a plan. He had shrunk his bones to look like a 5 to 6-year-old boy and deliberately let himself be caught by the 4 villains, pretending to be the victim. Even he had been tricked by him. If it wasn't for the Empress seeing through his deception and using the peacock tail to stop him, then the one lying in the carriage right now would be the Empress' headless corpse. Even if the assassin didn't kill him, he wouldn't be able to protect his master. How could he have the face to live in this world? Once he thought of this, a chill ran down his back and a layer of goosebumps appeared. What he couldn't understand was why the assassin from the Purple Heaven Pavilion didn't look for anyone else but Chen Ning. The other side clearly knew who she was, but they still wanted to kill her. If they really provoked the Purple Heaven Pavilion, then it would be a big problem that they couldn't get rid of. It could be said that there would be endless troubles. If this assassination didn't succeed, then there would be another one. Moreover, it would be stronger and harder to guard against. The other side was in the dark and they were in the light. They didn't know how many people there were and he was the only one who knew martial arts. How could he protect the Empress? This was a big problem that gave him a headache. Regarding his question, not only did he not understand, Chen Ning also did not understand. The only thing she could think of was the failed assassination attempt by Zixiao Pavilion last time. Could it be that their target was her? Not Namu Kuo? I don't know. Last time at the courier station, a group of assassins from Purple Heaven Pavilion broke into the courier station and tried to assassinate Namu Kuo's men. At that time, one of the assassins wanted to kill me but he was killed by Namu Kuo. Could it be that they thought I was one of Namu Kuo's men? That's why you're doing it again after failing last time? After thinking about it, she felt that this was the only reason. She didn't know martial arts, had no enemies and had no contact with people in Jianghu. How could she attract the attention of a killer from Purple Cloud Pavilion? Chapter 1048. Xiaoru suddenly felt a chill run down her spine. You mean if they didn't harm the young miss this time, they will do it again? She said in a trembling voice. Jue Feng nodded with a serious expression. Empress, no matter what the reason is, since the Purple Heaven Pavilion's assassins have their eyes on you, then this subordinate would like to suggest that we immediately return to the capital and ask the Emperor to send more people to protect your safety. This subordinate is only one person. I'm afraid I can't protect the Empress. He spoke the truth. Facing the mysterious Purple Heaven Pavilion, he really didn't have the slightest bit of confidence. Chen Ning didn't even think about it before rejecting his proposal. Return to the capital? No, I'm going to find the Divine Doctor. I definitely won't give up halfway. If I return to the capital now, Xiaobai can't be saved. But, Empress, your safety is more important. If the Purple Heaven Pavilion's assassins come again, this subordinate really doesn't have the confidence. Jue Feng still wanted to persuade her. Chen Ning didn't wait for him to finish and confidently said, Don't worry, that assassin won't appear in a short period of time. That's impossible. The Purple Heaven Pavilion's assassins won't give up until they reach their goal. Jue Feng knit his brows. If this subordinate knew that he was someone from the Purple Heaven Pavilion, then this subordinate would have killed him with a single slash. Then I would have melted his corpse and destroyed all traces, making it so that the people from the Purple Heaven Pavilion wouldn't be able to find him. The more he thought about it, the more he regretted it. Jue Feng, I didn't say that he would give up his goal, I only said that he wouldn't come to kill me in a short period of time. Chen Ning raised her eyebrows and revealed a faint smile. Xiaoru asked me why I didn't kill him with a single slash because I knew that if we really killed him, then we would be in big trouble that we couldn't get rid of. It was because I found out that he was someone from the Purple Heaven Pavilion that I let him go. Think about it, since this is an organized and conspiratorial assassination, if he disappeared without a trace, would the people of Purple Heaven Pavilion not think that this was done by us? Would they let me go? Of course not, they would come out in full force and fight to the death with me. So I didn't kill him. I let him go and then used that kind of method to humiliate him. If you were him, would you tell this kind of shameful thing to others? Jue Feng's mouth fell wide open, not knowing what to say. Are you sure you wouldn't? Jue Feng asked with a smile. Jue Feng nodded. This kind of shameful matter, he wished he could keep it in his stomach and not tell anyone else. Since he won't tell anyone, then next time he will definitely come to take revenge on me alone. Only he has been poisoned by my peacock tail opening, and Mo Chuan said that the medicine in the needle was specially refined. Even if his organization has the antidote, it won't be easy to cure him of the poison. Once he recovers, we will be the divine doctor will be our back to the palace. What we will be need to be the divine doctor. Feng said with a faint smile. Her words immediately calmed Jue Feng down. The more he thought about it, the more reasonable he felt. His heart, which had been in his throat, fell into his stomach. However, we still have to be careful on the road. Miss Xiaoru, it's best if you put away your merciful heart and don't randomly save people. You almost killed the Empress this time, do you know that? Jue Feng had a serious expression as he stared at Xiaoru. If it wasn't for the fact that Xiaoru was a girl, he would have already taught her a lesson. Chapter 1049. Young miss, this servant has let you down. It's all this servant's fault, it's all this servant's fault. This servant won't save anyone in the future. No matter who it is, this servant won't save a single person. Xiaoru cried as she threw herself into Qin Ning's embrace. Qin Ning stroked her hair and comforted her. Xiaoru, this matter isn't your fault. Saving people was the right thing to do, naturally you should save a good person. In this world there will always be more good people than bad people, right? Even if you save another white-eyed wolf, there's no need to be afraid. Next time we'll skin him and make you a wolf skin mattress. You can sit on it every day, alright? Alright. Xiaoru's tears turned into a smile. Because of this accident, Jue Feng was very cautious and careful on his way. He did not dare close his eyes every night, afraid that something would happen if he was not careful. Whenever there was a slight movement, he would open his eyes wide and look around vigilantly. In less than 2 days he had a pair of panda eyes with sunken eye sockets. His face was haggard and his eyes were bloodshot. He was even thinner, just like a bamboo pole with clothes on it. If the wind was a bit stronger he would be blown away. Although Qin Ning said that the Purple Heaven Pavilion's assassins would not come in the short term, Jue Feng thought of the Emperor's warning before he left and did not dare slack off at all. Jue Feng, you don't need to be so paranoid. If you don't sleep like this and an assassin really comes, do you have the confidence to beat him? Qin Ning had tried to persuade him several times, but he still stubbornly insisted. Every night, he would hold his sword and guard their roof, keeping his eyes open until dawn. However, this question stumped him. He gritted his teeth and said, "This subordinate will protect your safety with my life." Qin Ning couldn't help shaking her head. Jue Feng's wooden head really gave her a headache. He was loyal and meticulous, but if he was too rigid and stubborn he would be pedantic. If you don't sleep like this in less than 2 days without an assassin coming, your body will be as weak as a scarecrow and you will fall down. If you fall down, who will protect me and Xiaoru? How will you explain this to the Emperor? So, your body is the most important asset. You have to eat your fill and sleep well to have enough strength and energy to fight, do you understand? Qin Ning was like teaching a primary school student. Jue Feng seemed like he understood. What if this subordinate falls asleep and the assassin comes? I have my own methods. Qin Ning rolled her eyes at him in annoyance. You can go to bed in the future, I don't need you to keep watch. She released the aura of an empress and Jue Feng did not dare not listen. 2 days later, Qin Ning found that there were more and more people and carriages on both sides of the road. She couldn't help feeling this was strange. Thinking about it, he guessed the reason. Jue Feng, are we reaching the place where the godly doctor lives? Jue Feng stopped his whip and turned around to reply, that's right. Head east 70 miles and there is a small valley. The godly doctor's medical hut is inside and these people should be going to find the godly doctor to cure them. Xiaoru looked at the endless stream of carriages and people and couldn't help clicking her tongue. She called out, then let's hurry over, s. Seeing that they were about to reach their destination, Jue Feng became excited. He raised his whip and drove the carriage quickly, passing several carriages in a short while. Chapter 1050. Looking forward, there was a long line of carriages that they couldn't see the end of. Moreover, after waiting for a long time, the carriages in front of them did not move at all. Jue Feng couldn't help saying, this subordinate will go ask around and see what is happening in front. Qin Ning nodded. Jue Feng jumped off the carriage and used his qinggong to run forward. Not long after, he ran back with a strange expression on his face. What is happening in front? Is the road collapsing and is there a roadblock? Qin Ning asked. No. Jue Feng shook his head. These people are all here to see the divine doctor. Xiaoru took in a cold breath. That many? She stood on the carriage and stood on her tiptoes to look forward. She saw a long line of carriages that stretched far into the distance and she couldn't see the front at all. Not to mention the divine doctor's medical hut, there wasn't even a shadow of a mountain valley to be seen. Are all these carriages lined up? Qin Ning asked. Zhui Feng nodded. That's right, this subordinate ran to the entrance of the mountain valley in one breath. With a rough estimate, there are at least 2,000 carriages lined up in front of us. This subordinate asked the people in front of us and they said that they have been lining up for 3 days and 3 nights, but the divine doctor's speed is very fast. The people lining up at the entrance of the mountain valley should be here in another half a day. Over 2,000 carriages. Why are there so many people here? Xiao Ru gave a surprised cry as her mouth opened wide. Then she became depressed. Young miss, how long do we have to line up for? Do we have to wait here for 3 days and 3 nights as well? The divine doctor is very famous. There are people coming from all over to see him every day. No matter what time they come, they have to line up to see him. Even if we wait for 3 days and 3 nights, we don't know if we can invite the divine doctor. Zhui Feng looked at the long line of carriages and gave a long sigh. He didn't have much confidence in his heart and now his hopes were even slimmer. There were many people coming from thousands of miles to see a doctor, but they wanted to invite the divine doctor to the capital city. They came empty-handed and they didn't even bring a gift. It would be strange if they could invite the divine doctor. Miss Chin, this subordinate thinks we should prepare a gift. This way we can ask the divine doctor to treat us. If we just come here like this, I'm afraid the divine doctor won't like us. Zhui Feng carefully suggested. Along the way he had seen many carriages with gifts on them, but their carriage was the only one that had nothing. Xiao Ru also nodded, expressing her agreement. That's right, young miss, we should also prepare a gift. Gift? What gift do you want to prepare? What gift do you want to prepare? What is he like? What is he like? Chen Ning softly said, you have to give him something he likes. We don't know anything about this godly doctor. Can you guarantee that the gift you give him will be to his liking? Sometimes it might even touch on his taboo. What's more, he has the title of the world's #1 divine doctor. What gift in this world can enter his eyes? Her questions made Zhui Feng and Xiao Ru speechless. Then are we going to invite him empty-handed? Xiao Ru said. Chapter 1051. Xiao Ru and Zhui Feng looked at each other, feeling confused. They did not understand what Chen Ning's words meant. Young miss, your meaning is that we're not going to invite him? Xiao Ru scratched her head and asked. Chen Ning revealed a faint smile and said, of course we have to invite him, but we have to see if his medical skills are as amazing as the legends say. Zhui Feng, Xiao Ru, let's go take a look. How do we look? Can't the carriage go through? Xiao Ru said in a daze. Silly girl, of course the carriage can't go through, but don't we have 2 legs? Let's go. Chen Ning jumped off the carriage and walked forward. Xiao Ru was stunned and found that Chen Ning was telling the truth. She gritted her teeth and jumped off the carriage, closely following behind Chen Ning. Zhui Feng's eyes swept over the carriage. He put his bag on his back and followed. The 3 of them followed the long line of carriages. They didn't need to ask for directions, they just needed to follow the direction of the carriages. The carriages were very long and Zhui Feng wanted to use his qinggong to carry the 2 of them. With his qinggong, it wouldn't take long for them to reach the valley, but Chen Ning rejected him without any hesitation. She would rather walk like this. Along the way they could hear quite a few stories about the godly doctor from the people who came to see them. It was just that those people were talking about him as if he was an immortal in the heavens. Along the way they had heard more than a dozen examples of him curing people to death and reviving bones. When they first heard it, Xiao Ru's mouth turned into a circle and she did not close it at all. She kept letting out exclamations, really? This is too mysterious. Hearing this, even the alarmed Xiao Ru became expressionless. Young miss, why does this servant feel like this godly doctor is a swindler the more I hear? Xiao Ru couldn't help whispering as she revealed a look of doubt. Chen Ning's lips couldn't help twitching. Tell me, why does he seem like a swindler? Xiao Ru said, that person just said that the godly doctor can cut open a person's chest and dig out the heart before putting it back. If a person doesn't have a heart, wouldn't they die immediately? This servant doesn't believe it. How could there be this kind of medical skill in this world? Her face was filled with disbelief. Chen Ning did not say anything before Zhui Feng said, this subordinate also doesn't believe it. Some people said that the godly doctor cut open a pregnant woman's stomach to take out the fetus. Once the stomach is cut open, how could a person survive? Can't believe it, can't believe it. The rumors of the swindler really are all exaggerated. His face also revealed a look of disapproval. Chen Ning said with a faint smile, the medical skills you're talking about, I've seen it with my own eyes. If this divine doctor really has this kind of skill, then he really can be called the #1 divine doctor in the world. She looked to the front and she had her eyes. This was because some of the cases mentioned by the crowd were indeed unimaginable to them, but as someone who came from the modern era, she didn't find it surprising at all. Feng. Yun Xiao Xiao Feng was not other words. A doctor would not have thought. Could it be that the #1 genius doctor in the world was like him, a transmigrator from the modern world? If that was really the case, then it would be more hopeful for her to ask him to return to the capital to save the people. Seeing that they were both transmigrators, he couldn't very well reject her request, right? Chapter 1052. Qin Ning secretly laughed at her own whimsical thoughts. Xiao Ru and Jure Feng were shocked speechless by her. The two of them stared at her. After a while, Xiao Ru swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said, "Young miss, have you really seen this kind of medical skill before? Cutting open a person's stomach to take out a baby? Is that baby still alive?" Qin Ning nodded, but she didn't say anything else. She knew that in the eyes of the people of this era, surgery from the modern era would definitely be considered shocking. The three of them walked until dusk before they finally saw the valley in front of them. There were still carriages lined up at the entrance of the valley. They continued to follow the carriages into the valley. This was a small valley surrounded by mountains on three sides. It wasn't too big, but the environment was very quiet. The sunset shined on the side of the mountains, covering the entire valley in a light red veil. The little valley was covered in a faint red mist. Looking into the distance, the scenery was very beautiful. So beautiful. Xiao Ru couldn't help praising it. Qin Ning also felt relaxed. She secretly thought that the godly doctor had chosen a good place. It was simply a paradise. Once she stepped into the valley, she felt that the air was very fresh. Taking a deep breath, her chest felt very comfortable. Her entire heart calmed down and she felt an indescribable sense of comfort. She looked around and saw that the valley was surrounded by medicine gardens. There was a blue stone path in the middle that led into the depths of the valley. She could see several cottages at the end of the stone path that were bathed in the light of the setting sun. It could be assumed that those cottages were the godly doctor's medical hut. All of the carriages were parked at the entrance of the valley. The blue stone path from the entrance to the medical hut was filled with people waiting to see the doctor. With a single glance, there were at least several hundred people. The strange thing was that everyone was silent. Other than the chirping of birds, there was no sound of people in the entire valley. Xiao Ru had many questions she wanted to ask, but seeing that the people in the line were all silent like mutes, she didn't dare say anything. She could only secretly pull on Qin Ning's sleeve. "Young miss, why aren't they saying anything? Are they all mutes?" She was still a child and couldn't hold back her words. Hearing this, Qin Ning couldn't help glaring at her. She didn't even have time to scold her before someone heard Xiao Ru's words. Little miss, is this your first time coming to the godly Dr. Valley?" An old man in the line smiled as he spoke. Not only was he not angry, his expression was very kind. His voice was very low. It was clearly he had lowered it on purpose. Xiao Ru stuck out her tongue and said in an embarrassed voice, "I'm sorry, old uncle, I didn't do it on purpose." "How did you know it was our first time here?" "I didn't mean it." She also lowered her voice and said. The old man smiled and said in a low voice, "Because you don't know the rules of this valley, the godly doctor doesn't like people making noise. He likes silence, so all of us who live in the nearby villages know about it. Everyone spread the news to 10 to 100. So those who come to see the godly doctor don't talk loudly, so as not to disturb the godly doctor. So it's like this. But since we're so far away, it shouldn't be a problem for us to whisper here, right?" Xiao Ru stuck out her tongue and looked at the medical hut in the distance. Chapter 1053. Qin Ning revealed a faint smile and said, "Many thanks for the old uncle's advice. This is indeed our first time coming to the godly Dr. Valley, but this little girl still has a matter to ask the old uncle. I hope the old uncle can give me a pointer or two." The old man saw that she was elegant and had a soft voice. His heart already had a good impression of her. With a smile, he said, "Miss can ask away. I've heard that this godly doctor doesn't treat people of high status, people he doesn't like, and people who are skilled in martial arts. Is that true?" The old man nodded and said, "That's right, it's true." Qin Ning's eyes swept over the long line of people. Although she didn't know martial arts, she could still see that there were quite a few Jianghu practitioners in the line. There were even some people who were wearing rough clothes, but their waists were round and their faces were oily. With a single glance, she could tell that they were people who lived like princes. The old man followed Qin Ning's gaze and understood her meaning. He lowered his voice and said, "Miss, even if these people line up in front of the medical hut, the godly doctor will not treat them. No matter how much money they give, the godly doctor will not even pay them a single glance." Qin Ning asked in a strange voice. Why is that? Since the godly doctor has the title of the #1 godly doctor in the world, doesn't he study medicine to save people? How did the officials, nobles, and people who know martial arts offend Sir Godly Doctor? When the old man heard this, he looked over Qin Ning. Qin Ning had a natural expression as she let him look at her. She was wearing simple clothes, but she had an outstanding aura and grace. She was completely different from the people around her. The old man was very knowledgeable, so he could naturally see that she was not a normal person. He gave a sigh and said, Miss, you don't need to hide it. Tell me the truth, are you also from an illustrious official family? Qin Ning knew that she couldn't hide it from him, so she nodded. Old uncle's eyes are truly sharp. Then, young lady, are you going to treat yourself, or are you going to treat the maidservant beside you? If it's you, this old man advises you not to waste time lining up. If it's your maid or manservant, the godly doctor will treat them. This little girl isn't treating myself. I just don't understand why the godly doctor would set down these 3 strange rules. Old uncle, can you tell me a thing or two? Qin Ning politely asked. The old man didn't want to say it, but seeing Qin Ning's dignified expression and gentle voice, he didn't have the heart to reject her. Young lady, you are a foreigner. Speaking of this matter, not many of our local residents know about it. However, this old man just happened to be from the same village as the godly doctor's mother, so I know the whole story. Speaking of which, this is something that happened many years ago. He sighed softly and raised his head. His pair of old eyes looked at the medical hut in the distance. Looking at the smoke rising from the chimney above the medical hut, he sank into memories of the past. They knew that their daughter came from a poor family and that man's status was high above them, so they did not expect her to be his wife. They only hoped that they could give their daughter the status of a concubine. Their daughter would have someone to rely on and the child in her stomach would be born, so they would not be talked behind her back. Who would have thought that when they entered the capital and went to inquire about the man's manner? When they came to the door, who would have thought that not only did the man turn hostile and refuse to acknowledge her, but he also ordered the servants to beat her parents out of the house and smash the jade pendant. He said that there was no such thing, that she was deliberately slandering him, and that she was muddle-headed because she wanted to climb up a high branch. He also refused to admit that the child in her belly was his own flesh and blood, and was extremely humiliating to her. Chapter 1055. Hearing this, Xiao Ru's face turned red with anger. She tightly clenched her fists and forcefully waved them. This man is simply an animal. He's not human. He's heartless, he's even more of a white-eyed wolf. Also, that girl is truly pitiful. What happened after that? What happened to them after they returned to their hometown? Her eyes were filled with tears of sympathy. The old man wanted to tell her to keep her voice down, but when he saw her expression, he gently patted her shoulder and said, Little girl, you have a good heart. The heavens will protect you. Saying this, he couldn't help giving a long sigh. He continued to speak. Originally, the villagers thought that after they entered the capital, they would reach the heavens in a single step. They never thought that the family of 3 would come back in such a sorry state. The ridicule, and insults were all over the place. Her father was already injured and after being ridiculed by the villagers, he spat out blood and died on the spot. The girl's mother was also sick and she couldn't take out any money to treat her mother's illness. She could only watch as her mother left this world. She was filled with grief and almost didn't want to live anymore. Xiao Ru gave an ah sound and the tears that she had been holding back finally fell. She raised her sleeve to wipe her tears and said with a choked voice, Is she all right? If she died, what would happen to the child in her stomach? Old uncle, quickly tell me what happened to her. After saying this, she patted her head again. I'm really confused. Of course she didn't die, the child in her stomach is Mr. Godly Doctor. The old man laughed at her words and patted her head. Then his smile disappeared and he said with a serious expression, That's right, she didn't die. Her parents passed away a few days ago, but she didn't have the money to bury them, so she knelt on the street and sold herself to bury her parents. Although the villagers pitied her, everyone knew that she was a woman touched by that important person and that she was pregnant with that important person's child. Who would have the guts to buy her? So she knelt on the street for an entire 3 days, but no one cared about her. Just when she was at her wits' end, a famous martial arts master passed by. He took pity on her and buried her parents for her. She was so grateful that she was willing to become the master's servant. But she didn't expect that the master was a hypocrite. He already had a wife and a son, but he took a fancy to her beauty. On the 3rd day after she gave birth, he broke into her room under the pretext of being drunk. After that, the master threatened her not to reveal this matter to anyone, or else he would kill her son. The glimmer of hope that had just been ignited in her life was once again extinguished. Ah, there is actually such a man that is worse than a beast in this world. Chapter 1056. Who would have thought that she would go to the child's father's house? She thought that the man would take in the mother and son for the sake of the child, but she never thought that the man would not recognize her at all. He called the child in her arms a bastard and called her a cheap woman. He also mercilessly kicked the mother and son out. She held the child and cried in front of his door for an entire night, but the man did not even open the door. When the sun was about to rise, she was filled with despair. She wrote a blood letter and placed it in the baby's swaddling clothes. Then she threw the child into the moat and hung herself in front of the man's door. After the old man finished narrating the past, he had a serious expression and did not say a word for a long time. Qianning, Xiaoru and Zhui Feng were all shocked by this true story. Zhui Feng's eyes had already popped out from listening to this. He wished he could slash out with his blade and cut the two men in the story that were worse than animals into 10,000 pieces. He lowered his voice. Who is this divine doctor's father? Who is that martial arts expert? Old uncle, tell me their names. The old man was shocked. Seeing his face filled with killing intent, how could he dare say anything? He just shook his head. This old man doesn't know, I really don't know. Zhui Feng grabbed the old man's wrist and angrily said, You clearly said that everyone knows that man's name and everyone knows it, but now you're saying you don't know. Quickly say it. The old man shrank his neck and said with a bitter expression, Good man, please forgive this old man. Even if this old man had 120 guts, I wouldn't dare say his name. Although this old man is already old, this old man still has a family and this old man doesn't want to implicate them. Not to mention that this matter has already passed for so many years and even the divine doctor doesn't want to pursue it anymore. Why would a good man want to stand up for this old matter? He had already seen through Zhui Feng's intentions and he couldn't help regretting mentioning the past. He had caused this kind of big trouble. Zhui Feng, let go of this old uncle. Don't make it hard for this old man. Qianning suddenly spoke up. Zhui Feng let go of his hand, but his face was livid with anger. He gritted his teeth and said, These two scum, they don't deserve to live in this world. If they fall into my hands, I will tear their corpses into 10,000 pieces. When the old man saw his fierce appearance, his body began to tremble in fear. He quickly said, It has nothing to do with this old man doesn't know anything. Good man, please forgive me. Qianning said in a soft voice, Old uncle, you don't need to be afraid, he won't harm you. You just said that even the godly doctor won't pursue this matter. This means that the godly doctor knows who the expert who harmed his mother was, right? You said that he was thrown into the moat, so how was he saved? How did he learn such good medical skills? The old man was scared stiff by Zhui Feng and could only shake his head. No matter what Qianning asked, he tightly closed his mouth, not saying a single word. Qianning knew that she wouldn't be able to get anything out of him even if she kept asking, so she comforted the old man and led the two of them to the medical hut. Along the way, Xiaoru's face was completely red from her anger. She wanted to ask the old man what happened several times, but she was stopped by Qianning. On the way, Xiaoru's face was completely red from her anger. She wanted to ask the old man what happened several times, but she was stopped by Qianning. Chapter 1057. Zhui Feng's chest was filled with anger. He was thinking of a way to find out about this matter, but hearing this injustice, he was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Although many years had passed, as long as those two beasts were still alive, he would not let them go. Suddenly hearing Xiaoru criticize him, Zhui Feng was stunned. What about me? He asked. It's all your fault. Why did you scare the old uncle so fiercely? If you didn't scare him, the old uncle would have told us everything. Zhui Feng was stunned. He knew that he couldn't suppress his anger, but his chivalrous heart had been stirred up, so how could he control himself? Sooner or later, I will find out the whereabouts of those two beasts, humph. He swore. Xiaoru, you can't blame Zhui Feng for this matter. Moreover, after you hear this, remember it and don't tell anyone else. Whether this matter is true or false, it has nothing to do with you, do you understand? Qianning stopped and looked at the two of them as she spoke. But why? Young miss, aren't you angry after hearing this? This godly doctor's mother is too pitiful. That great character and that martial arts expert are simply not human. Xiaoru's face turned red as she spoke. You only heard the old uncle's story, how do you know if it's true or false? He only heard it and did not see it with his own eyes, so what he heard might not be true. Perhaps there are other secrets to this matter. When Ning heard this, she was also as angry as Xiao Ru. But when she calmly thought about it, she found that the matter was not as the old man said. If those two men really were scum of the world, with the godly doctor's current status, it would be easy for him to take revenge. He didn't even need to personally make a move. As long as he moved his mouth, there would be many people willing to take revenge for him. Young miss, you mean that the old uncle was lying to us? His story wasn't true? Xiao Ru's eyes opened wide. Ning shook her head and said, he was telling the truth, he wasn't lying to us on purpose. But the story he told was not something he saw with his own eyes. He stayed in the village the entire time, so how did he know what happened to that girl in the capital city? He only heard it from others. 1 spread to 10, 10 spread to 100, and this was the version that reached his ears. As for the truth of the matter, only the person involved knows. So, you better control your mouth and your hands. You can't speak nonsense and you can't act rashly. She looked at Zhui Feng with a faint gaze, with a warning look in her eyes. Zhui Feng's body turned cold and he said in a low voice, yes. When we enter the medical hut, Xiao Ru, you're not allowed to say a single word, do you understand? Ning was not assured, so she warned Xiao Ru again. Xiao Ru closed her mouth and forcefully nodded. At this time, the three of them had already arrived in front of the medical hut. They saw a small courtyard surrounded by a low fence, and there were several simple thatched huts in the courtyard. There was a pine board with tree bark on it and 2 simple words were carved on it, medical hut. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, it would be hard to believe that this simple and broken thatched hut was the residence of the famous godly doctor. Content with poverty, happy to be poor. Chapter 1058. On the way here, she had heard many people talk about the godly doctor's actions. They all said that not only was his medical skills divine, he also had a heart that saved people. If the patient could not take out the medical fee, not only would he not take a single cent, he would even give them the medicine. But if it was a patient that could not be treated, even if he took out 10,000 gold coins, he would not even stretch out a finger to take their pulse. Some people praised him to the heavens, saying that he was a godly doctor that had descended to the mortal world. There were also people that said that he did not save people and was a waste of being a doctor. But no matter if it was praise or criticism, the godly doctor remained calm and unmoved. He still followed his own routine, treating those that should be treated and those that should not be treated. Even if the other person died in front of him, he would not even bat an eye. He really is a respectable and mysterious strange doctor. Ning thought in her heart. She wanted to hear more about the godly doctor's actions from everyone's mouths. Then she would find the right medicine and think of a way to move him. For a godly doctor like him, if he did not care about fame or profit and was content with being poor, even if she prepared a precious gift in front of him, he would not be moved at all. Since it was like this, she could only win by surprise. Ning's group of 3 walked into the medical hut. They saw that the small courtyard was divided into 2 and both were filled with medicine. There were a total of 5 grass huts in the courtyard and a long line of people lined up in front of the middle grass hut. Hey you 3, did you get your number? You can't cut in line here. Suddenly someone spoke to them from the side. Ning looked over and found that there was a bamboo table beside the courtyard door. Behind the table was a 13-14-year-old young man who was looking at the 3 of them with a suspicious gaze. Do we need to line up here? Ning asked. Of course, first come first served. If you don't have a number, then take this and come in when it's your turn. The young man picked up a pen and wrote down a number before handing it over to Ning. Ning did not take the paper and shook her head with a smile. Little brother, we are not here to see the godly doctor. Not here to see a doctor? Then what are you here for? The young man asked in a strange voice. We heard that Mr. Godly Doctor's medical skills are divine and can bring the dead back to life, so we came here to see Mr. Godly Doctor. Ning said. The young man gave an "oh" sound and then waved his hand and said, My master will not see you. He is very busy and does not have time to see guests, so you should all go back. So you're saying that little brother is Mr. Godly Doctor's disciple? Ning said with a faint smile. Chapter 1059. Although this miracle physician valley wasn't big, it was filled with medicinal herbs. Ning had seen it all along the way. She roughly counted, and there were at least 1,000 types of medicinal herbs. Hearing this, she revealed a faint smile. Is that so? Knowing the herbs is the first test, then what is the second test? The young man pointed at the book on the table and said with a sigh, Master said that I have to memorize every word in this book, but no matter how I memorize it, I can't memorize it. What is this book? Can I take a look? Ning said in a warm voice. If it was anyone else, the young man would have refused without any hesitation. But he could not refuse Chen Ning's smiling eyes. He hesitated for a bit before saying, "This is a book that explains acupuncture points. If you haven't studied medicine, you won't be able to understand it." Chen Ning smiled and nodded. She took the book and flipped through a few pages before she had an idea in her heart. The names of the acupuncture points in this book were similar to the ones in the medical book she was reading, but it was more detailed. Each acupuncture point was clearly marked and could be understood with a single glance. Although she didn't understand medicine, after looking at it a few times, her eyes lit up. "Is this marked by Mr. Godly Doctor's handwriting?" She pointed at the small characters beside the acupuncture point and asked the young man. "That's right, it was written by my master. Master said that I have to memorize every word." The young man said with a bitter expression. Xiao Ru and Jue Feng were filled with confusion. Weren't they here to invite the Godly Doctor? Why was their master trying to get close to a young man who wasn't even the Godly Doctor's disciple? "If I can memorize all the herbs in this valley and memorize this book, can I become the disciple of the Godly Doctor?" Chen Ning returned the book to the young man and revealed a look of interest in her eyes. The young man nodded and suspiciously looked at Chen Ning. "That's what my master said. Miss, do you want to become my master's disciple?" Chen Ning gave a non-committal smile. "Little brother, we just want to see the Godly Doctor's medical skills. We'll just stand on the side and watch, we won't make a sound and disturb him. What do you think?" After she chatted with the young man for a bit, the young man suddenly felt a sense of familiarity with her. If she had made this request in the beginning, the young man would have rejected her without any hesitation, but now he was a bit embarrassed and scratched his head. "All right, then you can't make a single sound. My master doesn't like people talking or making a ruckus when he's seeing a patient. If you annoy my master, I'll be implicated." "Many thanks, little brother, we definitely won't disturb the Godly Doctor." Xiao Ru smiled at the young man. She smiled and said, Xiao Ru Ning." Xiao Ru couldn't help rolling her eyes at this young man. She thought, there are a lot of people who have lost their souls after seeing the young miss, but it's rare to see someone as young as you. Chen Ning walked over to the grass hut in the middle. Jue Feng followed behind her and suddenly lowered his voice. He said in a voice that only she could hear, "This subordinate can take the Godly Doctor away. The people here don't know any martial arts, so no one can stop this subordinate." Hearing this, Chen Ning suddenly stopped and turned around to look at Jue Feng. Jue Feng felt strange looking at her and his heart felt weak. Chapter 1060. Chen Ning let out a long sigh and said in a soft voice, "Jue Feng, is your head made of wood?" Jue Feng was stunned. Xiao Ru couldn't hold it in. She wanted to laugh, but looking around she didn't dare laugh. She used her hand to cover her mouth and let out a choking sound. Jue Feng's face turned red as he said, "Did this subordinate say something wrong?" Chen Ning gave a sigh and said in a low voice, "Use your brain to think. What kind of person is the Divine Doctor? If a random person who knew martial arts came and kidnapped him, would he still have such a big reputation? Do you think his 3 incursions are a joke? Without my orders, you're not allowed to do anything, do you understand?" Although her voice was low, her tone was very strict. Jue Feng's face turned red as he said in a low voice, "This subordinate will obey." Chen Ning no longer paid attention to him. She turned around and walked in front of the grass hut. She stood outside the door and looked in. The grass hut was not big and was divided into 2 rooms. The outer room had a row of patients and the inner room was the Divine Doctor's room. The door and windows were open and Chen Ning could see a young man wearing linen clothes sitting by the window, currently taking the pulse of a patient. Chen Ning couldn't help being stunned. Could this linen-clothed young man be the world's #1 Divine Doctor? If it really was him, then wasn't he too young? Only half of the linen-clothed young man's face was revealed, but from this half of his face she could see that this young man was only around 20 years old. His eyebrows were thin and his eyes were bright. He looked elegant and refined, like he was floating in the air. Xiao Ru and Jue Feng were also stunned. The 2 of them rubbed their eyes at the same time and looked over at the young man. They did not believe that the person taking the pulse of a patient by the window was the famous Divine Doctor. This young man must be the Divine Doctor's disciple. As the world's #1 Divine Doctor, he could not be this young. The 2 of them looked around the room a few times and found that other than this young man, there were 2 17 to 18-year-old juniors standing behind the linen-clothed young man. They had respectful expressions and were very well behaved. They were stunned again. Looking at the 2 juniors, it was like a disciple talking to his master. Could this linen-clothed young man really be the Divine Doctor? The 2 of them immediately looked over at Chen Ning. They were both thinking in their hearts that this divine doctor was this young. He definitely did not have any skills. It looks like we've come here for nothing. Zhui Feng was even more disappointed. In his impression, a godly doctor should have a long beard and a sage-like appearance. How could it be this little brat in front of him who hadn't even grown his hair yet? Chapter 1061. The linen-clothed youth took his pulse and then took back his hand. He picked up a pen and wrote a prescription on a piece of paper before handing it to a junior behind him. Boil the medicine according to this prescription. Boil 5 bowls of water into 1 bowl and immediately give it to the patient. His voice was low, but it was very pleasant to listen to. Yes, master. That junior obediently took the prescription and quickly walked out of the room. He did not even look at the people lined up outside as he directly went to the grass hut to boil the medicine. That junior was only 1 or 2 years younger than the linen-clothed youth, but he called the linen-clothed youth master. This meant that this linen-clothed youth was the godly doctor they were looking for. Xiao Ru's mouth opened wide, almost unable to close. This godly doctor. Wasn't he too young? Zhui Feng's heart sank even more. He had a trace of hope that this linen-clothed youth was the godly doctor's disciple, but it seemed like he was the godly doctor himself. Humph, what number 1 godly doctor in the world? He's probably the number 1 swindler in the world. He hatefully said in his heart. Godly doctor, can this illness of mine really be cured? The linen-clothed youth was facing a 40-year-old middle-aged man. His face was filled with worry, he was as thin as a match and his face was yellow without any blood. Although he was only 40 years old, his face was filled with wrinkles, making him look very old. Do you think that if I take this medicine, this stomach ache that has been tormenting me for over 10 years will be cured? His face was filled with a look of disbelief. As the saying goes, a stomach ache was not an illness but the pain was fatal. Ever since he was in his 20s, he had been suffering from stomach pain. At the beginning it was not too serious, but he was young so he could endure it for a bit. Who would have thought that as the years passed, his stomach ache would become more and more serious? Not only was he suffering from this illness, his body was also becoming weaker and weaker. The linen-clothed youth nodded and softly said, "You don't have any serious illnesses, it's just that there are too many bugs in your stomach. Once you take this medicine and get rid of the bugs in your stomach ache will be cured." The middle-aged man was shocked as he said in a trembling voice, "Godly doctor, you're saying that there are bugs in my stomach? Am I going to die?" He was so scared that his face turned ashen. He was thinking that if there were bugs in his stomach, how could he still live? The youth said, "You won't die. These bugs won't kill you, but they will slowly wear down your body and absorb your nutrients. You can eat 5 steamed buns in 1 meal, but you're as thin as a match. In fact, everything you eat is absorbed by the bugs in your stomach. Once you get rid of the bugs, your body will slowly recover. You'll quickly regain your strength and become strong." He seemed to be very patient. His explanations were very precise and easy to understand. Even the patients around him who did not know anything about medicine could understand and nodded their heads repeatedly. Moreover, his attitude towards the patient was very natural and there was not the cold at all of it. He was very friendly and he looked at the patient and said, "Master, the medicine has been prepared." The young man from before came in with a bowl of thick medicinal soup. "Yes, give it to him. Take it while it's hot," the youth in linen said. The middle-aged man's hands trembled as he received the bowl of medicine. When the medicine cooled down, he steeled his heart and drank it in 1 gulp. Everyone's eyes stared at him. Their hearts were filled with surprise and curiosity. This was the first time they had heard of a person having bugs in their stomach, but this was a diagnosis from the godly doctor's mouth, so everyone believed it without a doubt. Chapter 1062. Zhui Feng's lips curled into a cold smile as he looked at the linen-clothed youth. His eyes were filled with disdain. He gave a cold snort from his stomach, not believing a single word that the linen-clothed youth said. Bullshit godly doctor. He only knew how to deceive these pure and kind people. Listen to what lies he made up. He actually said that there were bugs in people's stomachs. This was simply nonsense. If people really had bugs in their stomachs, would they still be alive right now? Their intestines would have already been bitten by bugs and they would have died. He did not say a single word, preparing to expose this godly doctor's lies at any time. "My stomach hurts. Hurts. It hurts so much." The middle-aged man had not taken the medicine for long before his face suddenly changed. He bent down and hugged his stomach, rolling on the ground in pain. Seeing this scene, everyone stood up simultaneously with a look of surprise on their faces. Zhui Feng gave a cold laugh. What, killing bugs? This was clearly killing people. Mingyu, help him to the guest room in the back courtyard. The linen-clothed youth calmly said to the junior. Then his eyes swept over the patients in the outer room and he said in a soft voice, next. The middle-aged man on the ground was helped out by the junior called Mingyu. His face had a painful expression and large drops of sweat fell from his forehead, not even being able to stand up straight. The patients watched him leave, their hearts on tenterhooks. Some people did not understand what a guest room was and couldn't help asking in a small voice, what kind of place is a guest room? Stupid, a guest room is a toilet. Someone rolled his eyes at him. That person suddenly realized. Godly doctor, please help me cure this illness. I simply don't want to live anymore. The person sitting in front of the linen-clothed youth was a veiled girl. She spoke with a sobbing tone and a tender voice, sounding very young. The linen-clothed youth looked at her. Take off your veil. The girl's body trembled. She looked at the people in the outer room and hesitated without moving. Godly doctor, your medical skills are this high, can you take my pulse? She said in a timid voice. The linen-clothed youth softly said, look, listen, question and feel the pulse. When a doctor sees a patient, the first word is to look. The so-called look is to look at your complexion. This girl does not want this one to look at your complexion, so how can I diagnose your illness? The girl hesitated again. Zhui Feng's heart filled with disdain towards the linen-clothed youth. This genius doctor was clearly a lecher. When he was treating the middle-aged man, he felt his pulse. When it was this young lady's turn, he forced her to take off her veil to look at her face. If this wasn't lecherous, then what was it? If you are not willing to take off your veil, please forgive me for not being able to diagnose you. Please go back. Next, the youth in linen clothes said expressionlessly. The lady was extremely embarrassed. She saw that everyone was looking at her with a reproachful gaze. Then she saw another patient walking closer. Helpless, she gritted her teeth and took off her veil. Ah! Cries of surprise rang out from the surroundings. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the girl's face, and their faces revealed expressions of pity and curiosity. The girl's face turned red, and she lowered her head in front of everyone's strange gazes. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she bit her lips to prevent herself from crying out loud. Foam was stunned. Chapter 1063. Almost everyone had a look of disgust on their faces. Some of them even used their sleeves to cover their noses, as if the girl's sore on her chin was emitting a foul smell. The girl closed her eyes and the tears she had been holding back finally came out. Chen Ning found that the linen-clothed youth did not have a strange expression on his face at all. His eyes were clear, and not only did he not show any disgust towards the girl, he even moved closer and carefully looked at the sore on her chin. He even used his hand to gently press down on the sore. Does it hurt? He asked. The girl shook her head and looked at the godly doctor with wide eyes in disbelief. He didn't dislike her sore? The linen-clothed youth nodded. He washed his hands in the basin on the side and then sat down. Godly doctor, my illness. Can it be cured? The girl looked at him with a gaze filled with hope. This is not an illness, you don't need to be cured. The linen-clothed youth gently said. The glow on the girl's face dimmed and she said in a stunned voice, it's not an illness? The linen-clothed youth nodded. This sore has been around for a year. You had a serious illness a year ago and after you recovered, this sore grew, right? Yes. That's right. Godly doctor, how did you know? The girl's eyes opened wide in disbelief. The surrounding people also revealed looks of disbelief. Only Zhui Feng gave a cold snort in his heart. He thought, this girl's acting skills are really good, she really knows how to act. This sore of yours came from that illness. After you recovered, you were afraid that it would come back, so you would take medicine from time to time, right? This sore of yours is not an illness, it is because you took too much medicine. Medicine is 30% poisonous and this poison has been stored in your body, so it will come out through this sore. As long as you don't take any more medicine when you go back, this sore will be healed without any medicine. So, I won't give you a prescription right now because no matter what medicine you take now, it will only worsen your sore. The linen-clothed youth said this and the girl nodded. Godly doctor, you're not wrong at all. I'm afraid of being sick, so whenever I feel uncomfortable, I'll take medicine. I never thought that eating too much medicine would make me like this. She felt more regretful the more she thought about it and began to cry again. After your sore heals, there will be a large scar on your face. I have a tube of ointment here that can remove scars. If you want to use it, you can give it a try. The linen-clothed youth said. The girl's eyes lit up and she immediately said, I'm willing to use it. Godly doctor, how much does this ointment cost? Is it very expensive? She couldn't help grabbing the purse in her hand as she nervously said. The linen-clothed youth looked at her and said in a nervous voice, God doctor it. Of the purse and he and he of her he, of the purse. She took out of the coins and of the purse. As she could on it, he. A young man behind the hemp-clothed youth took the money, opened the cabinet and took out a tube of ointment and handed it to the girl. The girl clasped the ointment tightly and walked out with 1,000 thanks. The surrounding people all looked at the girl's back with envy. They all knew that the godly doctor's treatment fee varied from person to person. His eyes seemed to be able to see through people's hearts. With just a glance he would know how much money you had. Chapter 1064. Everyone knew that the godly doctor had the 3 don't treat rule. As long as a patient fell into one of these 3 rules, the godly doctor would not save them. So there were many nobles and Jianghu people that would disguise themselves and pretend to be poor people to seek treatment. However, under the godly doctor's sharp eyes, they could not hide anything. They came by luck but returned with disappointment. As long as the godly doctor made a move, there was no illness that he could not cure. Even if he offered money he would not hesitate at all. Just like that girl's ointment, it had such a miraculous effect. How could it only be worth 10 copper coins? The godly doctor's eyes swept over and knew that the girl was embarrassed, so he only asked for 10 copper coins. Perhaps these 10 copper coins wouldn't even be enough to buy the residue of the ointment. So everyone was envious of that girl's good luck. Zhui Feng saw this and couldn't help muttering in his heart, Humph, fishing for fame, no wonder he has such a big reputation. He did not know why, but he did not like this linen-clothed youth at all. He always felt that he was a hypocrite and was exaggerating. He could not see any high-level medical skills at all. He moved his lips several times, wanting to persuade Ning to leave, but he saw that Ning was staring at the hemp-clothed youth without blinking. From taking his pulse to observing his expression, she was carefully watching his every move. She had a very interested expression on her face which made him swallow back the words he was about to say. Ning's heart trembled. He said in his heart, the Empress is still young and is a young lady from a wealthy family. She has not seen much of the world and has never seen the face of a Jianghu swindler. She was just casually bluffed by this godly doctor and believed it. Humph, I will find a chance to expose this godly doctor's lies and ruin his reputation. Godly doctor. You really are the godly doctor. Suddenly, a joyful shout came from outside the hut. Everyone turned to look. They saw the middle-aged man with the stomach ache running over with a face of wild joy. He charged into the hut and bowed down to the linen-clothed youth. Godly doctor, your medical skills are really brilliant. You said that there were worms in my stomach and there really were worms and a lot of worms. It was really too scary. When I went back to take a look, I was so scared that my legs went soft and I almost fell into the latrine pit. That person said in an overjoyed voice. When everyone heard this, they were all shocked. They looked over at his face and saw that his face was yellow and listless. Although he was now skinny, his face was rosy and full of life. There was not a trace of sickness on him at all. Old brother, when you went to the toilet, did you really poop bugs? Old brother, just now you went to the toilet, did you really poop bugs? The middle-aged man nodded his head again and again, his face revealing an aghast expression. A lot. If it wasn't for the godly doctor's medicine, I wouldn't dare to believe that there would be so many bugs in my stomach. It's all because of these damned bugs causing trouble in my stomach, causing me to have abdominal pain from time to time. Now my stomach doesn't hurt, not even a little bit. Godly doctor, your great kindness, this lowly one will never forget. He knelt on the ground and kowtowed a few times to the linen-clothed youth. Everyone let out a buzzing sound of disbelief. Chapter 1065. Zhui Feng hesitated a bit before following behind those people to see what was going on. After a while he was the first to come back. His face looked like he had eaten shit, it was very ugly. When he thought of what he had just seen, his throat felt itchy and he almost vomited. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never have thought that this person's stomach would have bugs. Moreover, they were densely packed like dozens of white earthworms. Ugh. Zhui Feng's chest turned over and he quickly used his hand to cover his mouth. He suppressed that disgusting feeling with great difficulty. Impossible. This was definitely impossible. He definitely did not believe that these bugs really came out from the middle-aged man's stomach. Perhaps it was the genius doctor's disciple that put them in ahead of time to confuse everyone's eyes. He put on a good show to make everyone believe it was real. Right, it must be like this. Humph, he definitely could not fall for this genius doctor's trick. Genius doctor, why does this little one's stomach have so many bugs? This time the genius doctor has cured this little one, but what if this little one's stomach grows more bugs in the future? The middle-aged man asked with a face of worry. The linen-clothed youth asked, do you like to drink raw well water? That's right. The middle-aged man nodded. Your illness is caused by drinking raw well water. There is a type of long worm that likes to lay its eggs in water. These eggs are very small and almost invisible. I guess you must have drunk well water that contains the worm eggs. That's why so many worms hatched in your stomach. In the future, you must remember to boil the well water before drinking. Then you won't get this illness again. After the linen-clothed youth finished speaking, the surrounding people couldn't help sucking in a cold breath. Most of them were villagers that lived nearby, so drinking raw well water was a common occurrence. Once they heard that there were bugs in the well water, they couldn't remain calm. Genius doctor, I also drink raw well water every day. Do I also have bugs in my stomach? Someone didn't care that it wasn't his turn yet as he stepped forward to ask. He had just personally seen the bugs coming out of the back courtyard and was incomparably shocked. Thinking about how his stomach also had these terrifying bugs, his face turned ashen and he couldn't even stand straight. There were quite a few people that had the same thoughts as him. They all swarmed forward and began to ask questions. Everyone, don't make a fuss. If you disturb my master, no one will be treated today. When the genius doctor's disciple saw this, he stepped forward in front of the linen-clothed youth and spoke in a loud voice. Everyone instantly shivered. They immediately remembered that the godly doctor liked quiet and did not like noise. They immediately closed their mouths and couldn't help moving back. The chaotic scene immediately became so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. Everyone held their breaths, not daring to even breathe loudly. They looked at the youth in linen robes with uneasy hearts. The youth in linen clothes had an ugly expression on his face. He sat in the chair. His skin was already very pale, but now it was so pale that there was no trace of blood. He frowned and rubbed his forehead. Everyone's heart was filled with panic. They thought to themselves, oh no, we've angered the godly doctor. I'm afraid the godly doctor won't treat us today. Jue Feng looked down on the linen-clothed youth even more. You're just putting on an act. The patient only spoke a little louder. Who are you putting on this look for? Chapter 1066. The linen-clothed youth gave an sound. Mingyu took out a small porcelain bottle and opened it. She poured out a red pill and placed it in front of the linen-clothed youth. The linen-clothed youth took it and swallowed it without even looking at it. Then he closed his eyes and waved his hand. Mingyu carefully stood to the side. Everyone stared at the linen-clothed youth without blinking. They were thinking, no wonder the godly doctor didn't like people making noise, it was because the godly doctor himself was sick. But wasn't he the #1 godly doctor in the world? They had never heard of a disease that the godly doctor couldn't cure. Could it be he couldn't cure his own disease? Qin Ning had a thoughtful look on her face. She noticed that the red pill the linen-clothed youth had taken had traces of cinnabar on it. Cinnabar had a small amount of fire poison in it and normal people would be poisoned if they took it. They would bleed from their orifices and die, but this linen-clothed youth dared to take the cinnabar pill. Could it be that he had a cold poison in his body and he wanted to use poison to fight poison? The linen-clothed youth sat there with his eyes closed. After a while his face relaxed a little. He looked up and looked over the crowd in front of him. Everyone, there's no need to be afraid. These eggs are only an isolated case, not all wells have eggs. However, when everyone drinks water in the future, try to drink boiled well water. This way you won't get sick easily and your body won't turn cold. Especially for those with women in their families, you have to be careful. The linen-clothed youth slowly said. His voice was even lower than before. When everyone heard this they all relaxed. Qin Ning found that this linen-clothed youth's voice was low. It was not because he had a low voice but rather because he was weak. She also noticed that from beginning to end, the linen-clothed youth had been sitting in the chair and had not stood up at all. Could it be that not only was his body sick, even his legs couldn't be used? On the way here, she had heard many legends about the godly doctor, but she had never heard that he was a cripple. Next. The linen-clothed youth slowly spoke again. The patient next in line revealed a look of joy. He had waited for a long time and it was finally his turn. When he was about to go forward, he suddenly heard a weak voice say, "Big brother, can you let this old woman look first? I feel so uncomfortable that I want to die." The patient turned around and saw an old woman in her 50s standing behind her, trembling slightly with the help of a walking stick. "Auntie, you can look at the illness first, I can't sit or lie down. I can only wait a bit." The old woman thanked the person and said with a sigh, I can't sit or lie down with this illness, so I can only stand." The old woman thanked the person and said with a sigh. Hearing this, everyone's eyes opened wide in shock. Not being able to sit or lie, she could only stand? What kind? What kind of illness? The youth in linen clothes was not surprised, and his face was still calm. He took the old woman's pulse, closed his eyes, and fell into deep thought. "How long have you been sick?" After a while, he suddenly opened his eyes and asked. "About 7 or 8 days," the old woman said. "Did anything happen when you got sick?" The old woman's eyes were already completely red. It was clear that this illness had tortured her quite badly. She hadn't closed her eyes for several days. She had been in pain the entire time, but after hearing the linen-clothed youth's words, her old eyes couldn't help widening. Chapter 1067. "Don't worry, tell me slowly. What happened that day?" The youth asked patiently. "Sigh, I'm getting old and my legs aren't as nimble as before. I wasn't paying attention and fell. It was just that this fall was a little heavy and it took me a long time to get up. From then on, I realized that I couldn't lie down or sit down. As long as I lie down or sit down, I'll be out of breath and cough non-stop. Godly doctor, can this illness of mine be cured?" The youth didn't answer but asked, "Did you just eat before you fell?" The old woman's eyes widened in surprise. "Yes, how do you know?" The youth nodded. "Auntie, I want to take a look at your illness. You might feel a little uncomfortable later." The old woman said, "It's okay. I don't care as long as I can cure this illness." "Mingyu, help this auntie lie down," the youth ordered. "Miracle doctor, I can't lie down. Once I lie down, I might not be able to get up again." The old woman hesitated. Mingyu said, "Auntie, don't worry. My master is here. He can cure any strange illness. Just listen to him." He helped the old woman lie down on the wooden bed next to him. The old woman lay down nervously. Everyone stared at her intently. They had never heard of or seen such a strange illness. Cough, 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 cough. As expected, not long after the old woman lay down, she started coughing hoarsely. She took a deep breath and coughed so hard that she couldn't breathe. Her skinny hands grabbed her clothes tightly and her eyes rolled back. "All right, Mingyu, help her up," the youth said. Mingyu quickly helped the old woman up and passed her the crutch. It was strange that the old woman stopped coughing after standing for a while. However, she looked even more dispirited and listless. Everyone saw the situation and felt that it was unbelievable. This was a strange disease that he had never seen or heard of before. "Mingyu, take 10 aged dates and add a bowl of aged vinegar. Fry them until they are hot and feed them to Auntie." The youth in linen clothes quickly wrote a prescription and passed it to Mingyu. Mingyu respectfully received it and quickly went to brew the medicine. After a while, the medicine was ready and Mingyu brought it in. The old woman hesitated. "Miracle doctor, can I really be cured after drinking this medicine?" She couldn't believe it. Because this bowl of soup was really not medicine. It was just a few dates and vinegar. It smelled strongly of vinegar. Could it really cure his strange illness? And the youth in linen clothes didn't say much and just nodded his head lightly. The old woman made up her mind and drank the whole bowl of vinegar soup. Ching Feng pat her back. The old woman suddenly raised her voice. Before anyone could react, another disciple took a step forward, stretched out his right palm, and struck the old woman's back with force. The old woman screamed and spat out a mouthful of phlegm. Chapter 1068. The old woman lied back down on the wooden bed in disbelief. She looked at the godly doctor in a surprised manner. She was filled with fear and did not dare close her eyes. Who would have thought that after a while, the cough she imagined did not come? After a while, she actually closed her eyes and began to snore loudly. When everyone saw this scene, they were all stunned. Just a moment ago, the scene of the old woman coughing as soon as she laid down on the bed was still fresh in their minds. Who would have thought that after drinking a bowl of vinegar date soup, her strange illness would be cured? And she was sleeping so soundly? If they did not see it with their own eyes, none of them would have believed it. Godly doctor. He really was a godly doctor. Everyone had already called this linen-clothed youth the divine doctor. Now that they had personally seen his incredible medical skills, they were even more amazed. Even Zhui Feng began to whisper in his heart. Could it be that this godly doctor's reputation was not undeserved and he really had some skills? Chen Ning saw that this linen-clothed youth had taken care of 3 difficult cases in a short period of time and she couldn't help secretly nodding. He had only taken a pulse and looked at the patient's complexion, but he was able to clearly explain the time and reason of the patient's illness without a single mistake. It could even be said that the medicine had cured the illness. with this kind of magical medical skills, he was truly worthy of the title of the world's #1 godly doctor. She was afraid that she would meet a swindler from the Jianghu, and she was even more afraid that the patient would be a doctor for this godly doctor. So when the godly doctor was treating the patient, she was very careful. Not only did she observe the linen-clothed youth's every move, even the patient's expression did not escape her eyes. However, she did not find anything fake at all, which meant that the doctor and the patient had not done this beforehand. Like this, her heart was filled with hope. As long as she could invite this godly doctor back to the capital to treat Xiao Bai would definitely be able to live. But how was he going to invite this godly doctor? Because from this godly doctor's past, it could be seen how much he hated the royal family, the nobles, and even the people of the martial arts world. She knew that as long as she revealed her identity and reason for coming, she would be mercilessly rejected and expelled by this linen-clothed youth. What should she do? What could she use to move this godly doctor and make him come to the capital to treat Xiao Bai? Qin Ning thought of 7-8 methods in her heart, but she felt that none of them were suitable. She stood there quietly, thoughts flying through her mind. She decided to be patient and wait for the right time. This noble one, please forgive this one for being unable to help your illness. Chapter 1069. The hemp-clothed youth had seen this kind of people many times, so he was not angry. He only said, "Qing Feng, Mingyue, send this noble person away." Qing Feng and Mingyue immediately came forward and angrily said to the fatty, "My master has 3 illnesses that he can't treat. Do rich people like you think you can hide from my master's eyes by wearing ragged clothes? You're looking down on people too much. Quickly leave, quickly leave. If my master says he won't treat him, then he won't treat him." The 2 of them threw the fatty out. The fatty was like a shrew as he sat on the ground and loudly shouted, "The godly doctor doesn't treat him and even hits him. Is there still any law in this day and age? Someone come save me. The godly doctor and his disciple are hitting people." When everyone saw this, they were filled with anger. They all accused the fatty of being shameless and told him to quickly leave. "Noble person," the godly doctor said that high officials won't treat him. Do you think his words are nonsense? Quickly leave. This is truly shameful. I don't know which door didn't close properly for this bug to come out. He thinks the old godly doctor is blind, but does he think we're all blind? Let's throw this bug out together. All right, throw him out. Several robust youths walked out from the crowd and rolled up their sleeves as they walked in front of the fatty. Without saying a word, they lifted the fatty up by his arms and legs. "Hey, what are you doing? Put me down. Put me down. Do you know who this old master is? I'm telling you, as long as you dare harm a single hair on my head, father will have my father turn you into mincemeat. Put me down." The fatty couldn't struggle and could only loudly curse. The several young men turned a deaf ear to him and let him curse as they carried him out the door. Everyone could only hear the fatty's unceasing stream of curses, and then they only heard a muffled plop sound, and then the fatty's curses suddenly stopped. When the youths returned, everyone asked them where they had thrown fatty to. A youth pointed at the backyard without a care in the world, the latrine pit. Everyone couldn't help laughing. Seeing this, Zhui Feng's heart couldn't help sinking a bit. This godly doctor was just like the legends. If the officials said he wouldn't treat them, he wouldn't treat them, not bending the rules at all. After Fatty's farce, some of the rich and powerful people in the queue also wore the clothes of ordinary people like Fatty. They wanted to pass themselves off as real people, so many of them quietly slipped away. There were also some who wanted to get lucky and continued to stay in the queue. Following that, Chen Ning personally saw the hemp-clothed youth treat several patients with difficult illnesses. These strange illnesses were something she had never seen before. But in the eyes of the hemp-clothed youth, it was as simple as eating cabbages. No matter how complicated the illness was, as long as he took the pulse, everything would be clear. One dose of medicine would be able to see the effect immediately. Zhui Feng was not convinced of him at first, but after seeing this, his heart received a strong impact. If this wasn't a genius doctor, then what would be? This kind of high-level medical skills, this was the first time he had seen it. Compared to Dr. Zhang's skills, he wasn't even worthy of carrying his shoes. Chapter 1070. Zhui Feng's heart hardened. No matter what, he would bring this godly doctor back to the capital city. No matter what method he used, he would not hesitate. The linen-clothed youth seemed to have sensed something. He suddenly turned around and looked at Zhui Feng. Zhui Feng's heart turned cold. He felt that although the linen-clothed youth's eyes were calm, they seemed to be able to see through one's heart. It was as if he could see through his thoughts. He immediately lowered his head and did not look at the linen-clothed youth's eyes. Although his martial arts were high, his spirit was very reserved. He was tall and thin with a very average appearance. The linen-clothed youth's eyes fell on Zhui Feng's face for a bit before moving away. He no longer looked at him and continued to treat the patients. Zhui Feng couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat. He could see that this linen-clothed youth did not know martial arts and could not even walk. He had been sitting in the chair without moving at all, but his eyes were able to see through him. The linen-clothed youth's diagnosis speed was very fast. Qin Ning pondered while looking at him. This youth's treatment methods could be said to be very varied. He knew bone setting and acupuncture. It could be said that he was most proficient in acupuncture. There were several cases where he did not give the patient any prescriptions at all. With just a few needles, the patient's pain had completely disappeared, making people gasp in amazement. She couldn't help thinking of the book that the youth at the door was reciting about acupuncture points. Her heart suddenly flashed with a thought, perhaps she could start from this aspect? The sky was getting dark at this time and the light of dusk entered the room. Qing Feng and Ming Yu lit an oil lamp and the faint yellow light illuminated the room. Master, we'll stop here for today. You've been tired all day, so you should rest. Qin Ning blinked and couldn't help wanting to laugh. This linen-clothed youth looked to be in his early 20s, only 2 years older than Qing Feng and Ming Yu, but the two of them called him an old man. It was truly interesting. The linen-clothed youth nodded. His face was a bit pale as he leaned back in the chair and closed his eyes. Everyone, my master is tired, we'll stop here for today. I ask everyone to come back tomorrow, my master needs to rest. Qing Feng and Ming Yu bowed to the waiting people. Everyone knew the godly doctor's rules. They would only see patients until it was dark, so they all left. Those who lived nearby went home to rest and those who came from far away had carriages, so they went back to their carriages to rest. They all had numbers in their hands, so they were not worried about lining up again the next day. Qin Ning saw Qing Feng and Ming Yu take care of everything and she couldn't help secretly admiring them. She stood outside the door and hesitated a bit. Chapter 1071. Qing Feng and Ming Yu both shook their heads and said, "My master doesn't see outsiders. If Miss wants to see a doctor, you can wait in line, but you have to ask my master. My master won't teach you." Their hearts suddenly came to a realization. They thought that this girl also wanted to become their master's disciple. How could it be that easy? To be able to become the disciple of the godly doctor, they had to put in a lot of effort to finally become the disciple of the godly doctor. For example, the disciple at the door had already been in the godly doctor valley for 3 years and 6 months, but he still hadn't formally become a disciple. This girl, if she wanted to become a disciple, she had to go through them first. Qin Ning raised her eyebrows. Do you two think that I'm here to become a disciple? I don't want to become a disciple, I just have a few medical questions that I don't understand, so I want to ask the godly doctor for advice. Qing Feng and Ming Yu still shook their heads. They blocked the door, not letting her take a single step in. Miss, please go back. Master won't see you and won't answer your questions. Over the years, they had seen too many people like Qin Ning who wanted to find an excuse to get close to the godly doctor. So no matter what Qin Ning said, the two of them just shook their heads. Xiao Ru couldn't help feeling annoyed. She placed her hands on her hips and glared at the two of them. As soon as she opened her mouth, Qin Ning glared at her, not allowing her to speak. She could only swallow the words that were about to come out of her mouth and angrily stared at Qing Feng and Ming Yu. All right, since the godly doctor doesn't want to see outsiders, I'll come back tomorrow. Qin Ning said with a faint smile. Even if Miss comes back 10 times, my master still won't see you. If Miss is not sick, then please leave the godly doctor valley. Qing Feng and Ming Yu said in unison. You're blocking me from asking the godly doctor, aren't you afraid that the godly doctor will regret it? Qin Ning's eyes flashed and she suddenly raised her voice. She knew that the hemp-clothed youth could clearly hear her conversation with Qing Feng and Ming Yu, but he didn't say a word. It was clear that he didn't want to talk to her. This was not good. Then wouldn't she have wasted her trip? No matter what, she had to attract the godly doctor's attention first. Otherwise, everything she said would be a waste. Regret? My master has never regretted anything. Ming Yu and Qing Feng both laughed as if Qin Ning had asked a funny question. All right, since it's like this, I'll be leaving. Qin Ning was not angry. She turned around and slowly walked out. Qing Feng and Ming Yu let out a sigh of relief. They were worried that Qin Ning wouldn't leave. For a delicate little girl like her, they couldn't force her to leave. Seeing that she was willing to leave, it couldn't be any better. Chapter 1072. But Qin Ning had only flipped through a few pages and she had actually memorized it word for word. The young man's eyes almost popped out. You. He pointed at Chen Ning and was stunned speechless. Qing Feng and Ming Yu immediately stopped Chen Ning. The two of them had a serious expression on their faces. Where did you get that book from? This is our master's secret book, you thief. You're not allowed to leave. Thief? Why would I need to peek? It was this little brother who showed it to me. Chen Ning curled her lips and said. Qing Feng and Ming Yu both turned to look at the young man with a serious expression. You showed it to her? The young man said with a guilty conscience. I only showed it to her once. I never thought that she would remember so much. Just once? Qing Feng and Ming Yu both sucked in a cold breath. They both looked at Chen Ning with a look of disbelief. Ming Yu shook his head and said, I don't believe you. She only looked at it once and she memorized the entire page? I remember when I memorized this book, just the first page alone took me an entire 3 days to memorize it word for word. Junior brother, tell me honestly, how long did you show our master's book to her? What is her relationship with you? His voice was extremely stern as he stared at the young man with bright eyes. The young man's face turned red as he shook his hands. Senior brother Ming Yu, you've misunderstood. I don't know her and this is her first time coming to our Miracle Doctor Valley. I don't know how she memorized our master's book. You're lying. She memorized it after reading it once? Do you think I, Ming Yu, am an idiot? Junior brother Qing Feng, you're the smartest out of the three of us. How long did you take to memorize the Meridian Point Compendium? Qing Feng stretched out 2 fingers and said with a serious expression, I used an entire 2 days and 2 nights. His face was filled with disbelief. The young man's forehead was covered in sweat. He felt that he wouldn't be able to explain it even if he had 100 mouths. He looked over and saw Chen Ning looking at him with a smile. It was like he was grabbing onto a life-saving straw. Young lady, tell them, did you only take a glance at it? I really only let you take a look. Chen Ning nodded with a smile. That's right, I just took a look and remembered it. How hard is this? Just this simple content. Does it require you to remember it for 2 days and 2 nights? She looked at Qing Feng with a slight look of disdain. Qing Feng's face turned slightly red as he raised his chest and loudly said, Qing Feng, this is impossible. Qing Feng said, Ning Ning, Qing Feng, Qing Feng, Qing Feng, Qing Feng, Qing Feng. Xiao Ru and Jure Feng's chests were filled with pride. The two of them looked at Qing Feng with disdain and thought, Humph, you're so short-sighted and haven't seen the world. I'll let you see how strong my master is. Jure Feng had personally seen the whole process of reading steals on horseback. The thrilling scene at that time was still deeply imprinted in his mind. To him, this was something that he would never be able to do in his lifetime. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would never have believed that there was someone in this world who could complete the incredibly difficult task of reading steals from horseback. But he saw. Chapter 1073. Qing Feng didn't even think before saying, Of course I don't believe it. There is no such smart person in this world. I don't believe it. Ming Yu, do you believe it? Ming Yu also shook his head and said, I don't believe it. The young man opened his mouth, but he didn't say anything. He had seen it with his own eyes. Chen Ning had indeed only flipped through the medical book, but she had indeed memorized it word for word. Since it's like this, seeing is believing. If you don't believe me, you can take out another book and I'll recite it to you. Chen Ning rolled her eyes and said with a smile, All right, I'll go get it now. Ming Yu turned around and ran into the herb garden. After a while he came back with a thick medical book. This is for you. If you can really memorize it word for word after reading it once, we'll let you in to see my master. Ming Yu said as he handed the medical book to Chen Ning. Really? Chen Ning's eyes flashed. Of course. Ming Yu nodded seriously. All right. Chen Ning's eyes fell onto the thick medical book in her hand. She saw that there were 5 words written on the cover. Acupuncture roasted first and second scriptures. Although it was in small seal, she could recognize it at a glance. These 5 words were written by the same person as the Meridian Acupuncture scripture she had seen before. In other words, this book was also written by the linen-clothed youth. She couldn't help revealing a faint smile. The reason why she said those words was because she wanted to read the linen-clothed youth's medical book again. Qing Feng and Ming Yu really fell for her trap and took out another book. Slowly turning to the first page, she saw that the text was not in small seal, but rather written in regular script. The words were written with great force. She never thought that the linen-clothed youth would write such good words. Chen Ning held her breath and focused her attention on watching. The scripture of scorching needles could be said to be broad and profound, profound and profound. It was very rich in content. The introduction at the beginning was about basic pathology, while the latter part was about very useful clinical treatments, including causes of disease, pathogenesis, symptoms, diagnosis, acupoint selection, treatment methods, and prognosis. It was written in great detail and could be said to be a great achievement in medical skills. Although Ning did not understand medicine, she knew that this acupuncture scripture was very good. She also knew that if this medical book was spread to the world, it would cause a big sensation. She was shocked. She never thought that Mingyu would give her such a precious medical book. But after thinking about it, she understood. If it wasn't for the linen-clothed youth's suggestion, how could Mingyu be so bold? The linen-clothed youth must have deliberately tested her. Chapter 1075. Mingyu pouted at Ning and said with a smile, "You can't recite it, but this girl will definitely be able to. Otherwise, wouldn't you be slapping your own face?" Qing Feng did not smile as he said with a cold face, "If this girl can't recite it, then I'm sorry. I'll have to trouble this girl to leave behind a pair of eyeballs. My master's medical records cannot be leaked out." Of the two of them, one was openly mocking and the other was secretly stabbing. Zhui Feng and Xiao Ru's hearts were filled with anger, but thinking of Qin Ning's orders, no one dared to say anything. Although Zhui Feng had seen Qin Ning's ability to read steals from horseback, this time she was going to recite a medical book that she didn't understand at all. Could she really recite it word for word? Although Qing Feng and Mingyu kept saying that if she recited it wrong, they would dig out her eyes, but with Zhui Feng here, was it that easy to dig out his master's eyes? Regarding this, Zhui Feng was not worried at all. "Alright, then I'll start reciting." Qin Ning calmly began to recite in a calm manner. "My medical path has been flourishing for a long time. Examining the 5 viscera and 6 bowels, the blood vessels, the complexion of the blood, the complexion of the world, the person's life, the spirit changes, and the path of the needle." Her recitation of the first few sentences of the general outline was not bad at all. Although Mingyu and Qing Feng were surprised, they did not think much of it. They thought that the first page had at least a few hundred words and she had only recited a few dozen words. The further she went, the harder it would be to recite. The two of them had a deep understanding of this. A wise person must adapt to the 4 seasons, adjust to the heat and cold, live in peace with joy and anger, control yin and yang, adjust the hardness and softness. Like this, evil will not be born and you will live a long life. Qin Ning did not stop. Her voice was clear and beautiful. It was like a small bead hitting a piece of jade, very pleasing to the ear. Mingyu and Qing Feng blinked and found that she had already recited most of the contents of the first page. Moreover, she had recited it word for word. Their eyes popped out and their mouths opened wide, almost dropping their chins to the ground. Impossible. How was it possible for her to memorize so much content after only reciting it once? Qin Ning did not pay attention to the stunned expressions of the two people. She continued to recite. "Anger causes the qi to flow, vomiting blood, eating causes the qi to flow, causing the qi to flow. Happiness causes the qi to flow, the qi to flow, the qi to flow, causing the qi to flow. The grieving heart is anxious, the lung is like a cloth leaf, the liangjiao is blocked, the camp and way are not dispersed, the heat is in the middle, the qi dissipates." The more she read, the more fluent she became. The more she recited, the more admiration she felt towards the hemp-clothed youth's medical cultivation became. Unknowingly, she had already recited to the 4th page in one breath. "Ning he, Chin, Ming Ning a little girl. And. This girl a person? Chin, she too. And the two of them could not believe it even if they were beaten to death, but this kind of incredible thing had happened right in front of their eyes. Their mouths were wide enough to swallow a toad, but Qin Ning was still reciting it like flowing water. Chapter 1076. This girl couldn't have been sent by Master's enemy to steal secrets, right? Mingyu's mind suddenly flashed with this thought. He did not dare doubt Qin Ning's photographic memory at all and he believed his junior brother's words. This was the girl's first time coming to the Miracle Physician Valley and she had nothing to do with his junior brother. But because of this he became more afraid the more he thought about it. This girl was very smart, she had a photographic memory. She had only been in the Miracle Physician Valley for a short half a day and she had already read 2 of his master's secret books. If he let her out of the valley, it would be the same as spreading his master's medical skills. This could not be allowed. His mind turned and he decided that no matter what, he could not let this girl leave the Miracle Physician Valley. Qing Feng Mingyu, invite this girl in. A low and clear voice suddenly came from inside the grass hut. It was the voice of the hemp-clothed youth. Qin Ning stopped reciting. Her eyes sparkled and her lips curled up, revealing a faint smile. She had spent so much effort just to wait for this moment. Yes, master. Mingyu and Qing Feng looked at each other. They turned around to open the bamboo curtain and said to Qianning, "Miss, my master has invited you." Qianning took a breath. With a wave of her long sleeves, she walked into the grass hut. Xiao Ru and Jue Feng prepared to follow, but Mingyu and Qing Feng raised their hands to stop them. They coldly said, "My master only wants to see that girl, please wait." Jue Feng raised his brows. Xiao Ru put her hands on her waist and was about to explode in anger when they heard Qianning's voice coming from the grass hut. "Wait for me outside. Don't move or say anything." The two of them could only agree. Jue Feng's ears perked up as he listened to the movements in the grass hut. He was prepared to charge in to save the girl if there was even the slightest movement. Qianning was not worried that the hemp-clothed youth would harm her at all. She had been thinking about how to convince this youth to come to the capital city with her to save the girl. Even now she had not thought of a good method. But as long as this hemp-clothed youth was willing to see her and give her a chance to speak, she would be able to understand him a bit more. Then she would be able to find his weakness and move him. There was an oil lamp lit in the grass hut, making it dim. She walked in and saw that the youth was still sitting on the chair, not moving at all. His handsome and clear face was flickering in and out of the light, and a pair of faint eyes were staring at her without blinking. He was observing her just like she was observing him. Their gazes collided in the air, and neither of them looked away. Qianning looked at his studying eyes and revealed a faint smile. "Miss, you are not here to see a doctor. How dare you look down on my medical books?" His eyebrows arched upwards. What he was most proud of in his life was not the praise of his medical skills, but the 2 medical books he had written, which could be said to be the culmination of his lifetime of learning. In particular, the acupuncture scripture of Jia and Yi, which contained medical insights and clinical treatments. Even if it could not be said that no one would be able to replicate it in the future, it could be said to be unprecedented. It was his proudest work. Chapter 1078. Who would have thought that when Qianning mentioned the medical book that he was most proud of, she would use such a contemptuous tone? How could he not be angry? "When did I say that I looked down on your medical book? Although I don't understand medicine, after reading your acupuncture classics, I have gained a lot of benefits. Especially the upper work cure disease, middle work acupuncture fail, lower work acupuncture decline, lower work acupuncture decline, lower work acupuncture decline. These 3 theories can be said to be the golden jade of the medical world. It's a pity that most of the doctors in your book are the lower work acupuncture. They only know how to stick to the rules and treat their head and feet. If they could read Mr.'s masterpiece, it would be a great shame to them." Qianning calmly said. The expression of the youth in linen clothes immediately eased up, and a faint smile appeared in his cold and threatening eyes. This was because Qianning's words had hit the spot that he was most proud of. After this medical book was finished, he was naturally very proud. He knew that if this book was spread out, it would definitely cause a stir. But since ancient times, medicine had been passed down from generation to generation. He had never thought of passing down the medical book that he had painstakingly written to an outsider, so only his 2 disciples had seen it. This kind of feeling was like walking at night in embroidered clothes, or like a musician who was proficient in playing the zither. He was clearly playing a beautiful piece, but there was no one who understood him to appreciate it. It was really boring. Now that he heard Qianning's few words, there weren't many words, but each one of them touched the happiest part of his heart. It was like a hand that had perfectly scratched an itch, making every pore on his body feel incomparably comfortable. "Although you don't understand medicine, you do have some knowledge." The hemp-clothed youth's lips slightly curled up and he revealed an almost imperceptible smile. His fingers pulled on the armrest again and the black ropes that were wrapped around Qianning's body suddenly retracted, disappearing into an unknown place. Qianning rubbed the red marks on her neck and her lips curled into a smile. In this world there really was a saying, flattery doesn't work. Even a refined expert like the hemp-clothed youth had a change of expression after hearing a few words of praise. She looked at the hemp-clothed youth and saw that his eyes were filled with pride and expectation. His chin was slightly raised as if he was waiting for her to continue praising him. However, Qianning did not plan on continuing to praise him. She cleared her throat and her tone suddenly changed. "Although the acupuncture scripture written by you, Mr. Godly Doctor, is enough to be passed down to the future generations, I really look down on you for your selfish attitude." She said word by word. "What did you say?" The hemp-clothed youth's pale face instantly turned red. He gritted his teeth and coldly said, "Chen-Ning, you're so arrogant." His 5 fingers once again pressed on the mechanism of the armrest. As long as he pressed it lightly, this boastful girl would immediately become a ghost under his hands. "That's because what you've done is indeed contemptible." Chen-Ning did not place the linen-clothed youth in her eyes at all and did not care about the killing intent in his eyes at all. She spoke with a calm expression on her face. Chapter 1079. The linen-clothed youth's face turned livid as he coldly said, "The medical inheritance is passed down from sect to sect. My medical books can only be read by my disciples, so what is there to be regretful about?" "That's not true, that's not true." Chen-Ning shook her head and said in a serious voice, "Mr. Godly Doctor's words, please forgive me for not agreeing with you. Mr.'s absolute classics mention that, working hard to cure illness. This is the realm that every doctor pursues, but it is not the highest realm. Mr. Godly Doctor, in terms of medical skills, you can be considered number 1 in the world, but you cannot be considered a successful medical master. You cannot be considered a true ancient medical master." An ancient medical master. How can one be considered a master of medicine since ancient times? Chen-Ning's words made the linen-clothed youth's expression change. It was like a door had suddenly opened in his heart, letting him see the light behind the door. He couldn't help looking forward to it. Now he was completely attracted by Chen-Ning's words. The anger in his chest had unknowingly disappeared without a trace as he stared at Chen-Ning without blinking. Chen-Ning revealed a faint smile. A true medical master does not just need to be an expert, but rather help other doctors become an expert. This is the meaning of being an expert in medicine. Expert in medicine? This was the first time the linen-clothed youth had heard this word and felt it was new. He couldn't help asking, how can one become an expert in medicine? If you are like the current doctors, you will not become an expert in medicine no matter what. Each of them formed their own clan, and each clan and sect had their own inheritance. Everyone was like you, Godly Doctor, who treasured their own medical skills and hid them away. As time passed, how many unique skills could be passed down to the later generations? Mr. Godly Doctor, can you guarantee that your 2 disciples will inherit your superb medical skills? She aggressively stared at the linen-clothed youth. The linen-clothed youth was speechless. He stared at Chen-Ning and gasped for breath. He had always thought highly of himself, but he never thought that in this young girl's mouth, he would be nothing. He was not a great doctor, let alone a great master of medicine. He was not convinced, but thinking about the other side's words, they were all reasonable and he could not refute them. Then what kind of person can be called an expert in medicine? The linen-clothed youth gave a cold snort. In my opinion, only someone with a broad mind, a deep vision, and not sticking to the opinions of a sect, can take out the secret recipe passed down by their master and their many years of experience in medicine. Then they can share their knowledge with their peers and learn from the various families, bringing their medical skills to glory. Chapter 1080. The linen-clothed youth did not say anything. His hands were placed on the armrests and his body was slightly leaning forward as he stared right at Chen-Ning. His sharp gaze was frozen with a touch of ice, and anyone who looked at him would tremble with fear. But that did not include Chen-Ning. She calmly looked into his eyes and smiled at him. Out of the corner of her eye, she glanced at the armrest that his hands were pressing on. Chen-Ning knew that although the linen-clothed youth in front of her looked weak and had not moved from the beginning to the end, he could still kill her with a single finger. Moreover, she believed that although this grass hut looked simple and crude, every table, chair, bed and couch, and even every plank on the ground and every wall were all hidden traps and weapons. But she was not afraid. "Young lady, you don't have any medical skills, but your glib tongue is really impressive. What do you mean by promoting medical skills and becoming a medical master? What you say is really moving. Even I was almost moved by you. Hehe, do you think that after saying so much, you want me to take out the medical book that I've spent so many years to write and show it to others? Do you think I'm a fool, Un?" The linen-clothed youth suddenly opened his mouth. His eyes narrowed and a cold light flashed. It was clear that he was filled with killing intent towards Chen-Ning. The air in the room suddenly became a bit colder. Chen-Ning calmly said, "Your acupuncture scripture is indeed a classic that can be passed down for generations, but your vision is too small. You don't know that since ancient times, there are as many ancient books that have been passed down in the world. There is no end to learning. The acupuncture scripture can be said to be a pearl in the sea, but how do you know that there are no other pearls in the sea that can compare to your acupuncture scripture? You must be most proud of your acupuncture techniques, but I've read several ancient books on acupuncture and their insights are profound. They are not below your acupuncture scripture. The linen-clothed youth did not get angry and instead smiled. He looked up and gave 2 laughs. Good, very good. Since Miss is so knowledgeable, then may I ask, Miss, do you dare to recite all the ancient acupuncture books that you have read that are not inferior to my A and B Sutra? He gave a cold laugh and his voice was filled with contempt and disdain. Even if there really were acupuncture books in this world and this girl had memorized them, wouldn't she treat them like a treasure? How could she recite them to him? He purposely said that to use her words to slap her own face. Why wouldn't I dare? Yes, it's just that I'm young and haven't read many medical books. There are even fewer books on acupuncture. Among them there are many crude works. There are only 7 or 8 books that can be compared to your Jia Yi Jing. Chapter 1081. His first and second scriptures had many unique insights. Could be said that it was the first of its kind and was unknown to the world. This was what he was most proud of. You don't need to memorize 7 or 8, just 1 or 2 that are on the same level as my first and second scriptures. The hemp-clothed youth said with a cold smile. Qin Ning pondered and said, all right, but which one should I memorize first? Is it the copper needle scripture? Or the 14 scriptures? Or the needles reaching the source? How about we memorize the ghost 13 needles first? The hemp-clothed youth's eyes opened wide as he stared at Qin Ning without blinking. His eyes were filled with disbelief. This was because he had never heard of any of the medical books that Qin Ning had casually mentioned. This girl couldn't be making things up, right? He thought, but it doesn't seem like she's faking it. Could it be that there are acupuncture books that I haven't seen in this world? The hemp-clothed youth's heart began to heat up. Even his fingers that were on the armrest began to tremble. But his face did not change. There was not a single trace of excitement on his face. I'll memorize the 14 scriptures first, he said with a light expression. What the hell was this, 14 scriptures? Why had he never heard of it before? All right, then I'll memorize a few sections of the 14 scriptures. Qin Ning gave a faint smile and followed his advice. This book mainly talks about the 12 meridians and the governing and conception meridians. It is similar to your first and second scriptures. It mainly talks about the cycle of yin and yang and the convergence of qi points. It is very clear and organized. A doctor's treatment is like a human's treatment of water. Water flows through the earth like blood flows through the human body. The treatment of a doctor, 1 welcome and 1 follow, 1 replenish and 1 drain, 1 sweat and 1 lead. Her words were like flowing water, enunciating each word clearly. The hemp-clothed youth listened with fascination. Qin Ning seemed to understand the sentences she was reciting. She only had a photographic memory and all the medical books she had read were stored in her memory palace. At this time she could only recite them word by word. But in the ears of the hemp-clothed youth, every single word of this medical exposition was like a pearl, marvelous to the extreme, and it made him feel enlightened. The more he listened, the happier he became. The more excited he became. His pale cheeks began to turn red and his eyes began to shine. Good, well said. Hearing the wonderful parts, he couldn't help slapping the table in praise. Qin Ning gave a gentle smile and stopped reciting. The linen-clothed youth was listening to the most important part, but after waiting for a while and not seeing Qin Ning continue, he couldn't help asking, why aren't you reciting? Is there nothing else? After being in your grass hut for so long and talking so much, my mouth is a bit thirsty. Qin Ning's eyes looked around the room as she tried to change the topic. The linen-clothed youth immediately understood and couldn't help glaring at Qin Ning. He knew that this girl was deliberately keeping him in suspense. But the content she recited was full of wonders, making his heart itch unbearably. How could he not continue listening? Qin said, I scriptures, I. The hemp-clothed youth's originally cold and arrogant expression changed, and his tone became very polite. Chapter 1082. Qin Ning saw that there was a cup of clear water on the tray, but there was not the slightest bit of tea color. The linen-clothed youth revealed a proud look. This is my godly Dr. Valley spring water. It has a sweet fragrance and can cure all diseases if you drink it often. I ask Miss to have a taste. This kind of magical spring water, you really can't not drink it. Qin Ning revealed a sweet smile. She picked up the cup and took a sip. It was clear in her mouth and she tasted a faint sweetness on the tip of her tongue. She drank it all in one gulp. Miss, you really are bold. Are you not afraid that I'll poison the water? The linen-clothed youth saw that she drank it without any hesitation and was surprised. Ning smiled and said, "You are a godly doctor, not a poison doctor. Don't tell me you don't only know how to save people, but you also know how to poison people?" Her eyes sparkled as she looked at the other side. The linen-clothed youth's face couldn't help turning a little hot. He avoided her gaze and thought that this girl's eloquence was quite strong. Medicine is 30% poison. I can use medicine to save people, so naturally I can also use medicine to poison people. Does Miss think that I don't have this skill? He did not back down as he replied. This little girl has never dared to underestimate the godly doctor's abilities. Not to mention the fact that your medical skills have caused this little girl to prostrate herself before you, the godly doctor's mechanical skills have also caused me to gasp in amazement. You sat in the chair without moving, yet you were able to control this little girl to the point where she couldn't move at all. Furthermore, the mechanical wooden ox's tea-serving skills have also caused people to gasp in admiration. She said this with a smile. The linen-clothed youth's face couldn't help turning red. He didn't know why, but the other side was clearly praising him, but when he heard it, he felt that the other side was mocking him. However, he couldn't find any evidence in the other side's words, so he could only give a snort. "Miss, why are you being modest? You're just a little girl? If all the little girls in this world were as strong as you, then there would be no way for men to live." He also unknowingly mocked Ning. Ning just gave a gentle smile and did not reply. "Miss, are you not thirsty?" The linen-clothed youth waited for a while, but Ning still did not start reciting, so he couldn't help asking. "Does that mean that you can continue to recite it?" Ning blinked and innocently looked at him. The linen-clothed youth was confused and he secretly gritted his teeth, wondering what kind of trick this girl was playing. Although this was the first time he had met Ning and they had only talked a few words, he could already see that this girl in front of him looked pure and innocent, with a pair of eyes that were as clear as water, but she was hiding a heart full of evil. If he was not careful, he would fall into the other side's trap. So he was always on his guard, paying attention to her every move. "Miss, what else do you need? Just tell me directly." The young man in linen clothes finally couldn't restrain himself and spoke again. Ning blinked again and said 3 words, "I'm hungry." Ning words, clothed youth. Ning to say she. Ling ling king ling of ning ling and said, ling voice instead of ling of tea. "Master, may I ask why you summoned us?" Moon, sect to say, of sect of people. The linen-clothed youth said in a soft voice, "Honored guests have come to the valley. Quickly prepare a meal for our guests, do not neglect them." Honored guests? Chapter 1083. Ning smiled as she looked at them with her eyes. Qing Feng and Ming Yu's mouths fell open in shock. The esteemed guest that his master spoke of couldn't possibly be this arrogant and sharp-tongued girl, right? They were hoping that their master would teach this girl a lesson, but who would have thought that their master would treat her as a guest and even prepare a meal for her? This was simply too unbelievable. They had been in the godly Dr. Valley for so many years and this girl was the first person their master had invited. "Why aren't you going yet?" The linen-clothed youth looked over and saw the two of them standing there like wooden blocks. They stared at Ning in a daze and he couldn't help scolding them. "Yes, master." Ming Yu and Qing Feng felt like they were in a dream as they turned around and walked out. The two of them walked out the door with an expression like they were in a dream. They looked at each other and looked at each other. This one's disciple is a country bumpkin, he has never seen the world before. He has made a fool of himself in front of this miss. The linen-clothed youth's mouth was polite, but his face did not show any embarrassment. Ning said with a serious expression, "Did the godly doctor see me smile?" "This." The linen-clothed youth stared at her. He thought that this girl was not willing to suffer even the slightest loss. "Miss, this one's disciple has already gone to prepare a meal. It's boring sitting here, so can this miss recite a few sentences from the 14 scriptures?" Although the linen-clothed youth knew that Ning was purposely keeping him in suspense, he still couldn't hold it in any longer. Who told Ning to stop at a place where he needed to verify his identity. "Alright, but I forgot where I was reciting. How about I recite the contents of the Ghost Gate 13 needles again?" Ning's eyes rolled around. The linen-clothed youth gritted his teeth as he stared at her. With her intelligence and good memory, how could she forget? She was clearly deliberately making it hard for him. But even though he knew this, he did not dare offend her. This was because the Ghost Gate 13 needles that she mentioned had piqued his curiosity. He had never heard of the ghastly 13 needles in his life. Could it be a mysterious and lost acupuncture technique? All right, you can recite whatever you like. This one is all ears. He said without batting an eyelid, but his heart was filled with anticipation. Ning nodded. The Ghost Gate's 13 Needles is a secret of the School of Medical Metaphysics. There are a total of 34 incantations that have been passed down in the world. Doctor, please listen carefully. The disease caused by all kinds of evils, there are 13 acupuncture points that must be identified. The first needle is the Ghost Palace and the second needle is the Ghost Palace. The second needle is the Ghost Palace and the second needle is the Ghost Palace. The second needle is the Ghost Palace. She said it word by word very slowly. The youth in linen clothes became spirited. He held his breath and concentrated, afraid that he would miss a word. The song of the ghastly 13 needles actually described the technique of using needles, as well as the acupoints and the depth of the needles used. In particular, the acupoints of the ghastly 13 needles, which were known as the ghost needles, were very strange. He studied acupuncture and was very familiar with the acupoints of the human body. There were a total of 720 acupoints in the human body, 108 vital acupoints, 52 single acupoints, 309 double acupoints, and 50 extra meridian acupoints. Chapter 1084. But this Ghost Gate 13 Needles took a different path and focused on these 50 extra acupuncture points. This kind of treatment method was something he had never heard of before, but it made his eyes light up. His heart was burning and his palms were sweaty. This Ghost Gate 13 Needles song had opened a window in front of him, allowing him to see another world outside. Because of his excitement, his body slightly swayed. Then he immediately warned himself that he could not show the slightest bit of interest. Otherwise the strange girl would stop reciting it and he would not be able to learn the entire set. He was completely focused on listening, but Ning suddenly closed her mouth and stopped reciting. What's next? What's the next line? The linen-clothed youth was not paying attention and blurted it out. Ning blinked and said, Mr. Godly Doctor, what do you think of this Ghost Gate 13 Needles song? The linen-clothed youth's heart trembled as he casually said, Woo, it sounds smooth but there's nothing special about it. What he said was completely against his will. In reality, every line of the song brightened his eyes. It opened one window after another in front of his eyes, allowing him to see more and more of the new world outside the window. But he could not let this girl see through it. Oh, there's nothing special about it? Ning revealed a look of disappointment. She nodded and said, All right, since Mr. Godly Doctor doesn't like this Ghost Gate 13 Scriptures song, then I won't continue reciting it. What, you won't recite it? The linen-clothed youth almost bit off his tongue in regret. He was so disgusted that he wanted to vomit blood. My God, did you send this girl to deliberately torture people? He stared at Ning, wishing a hand could grow out of his eyes and fiercely scratch her face. In his life he had never met such a weird and difficult girl to deal with. She was simply the devil's star in his life. The linen-clothed youth placed his hands on the armrests and leaned forward. His eyes stared at Ning without blinking as his chest violently heaved up and down. He felt as if he was going to explode from the suffocation in his chest. Mr. Godly Doctor, I'm not interested in your Ghost Gate 13 Scriptures. How about I recite the Bronze Needles, for you? Perhaps this book will have something you're interested in. What does Mr. Godly Doctor think about it? Ning raised her brows and a pair of crystal-clear eyes looked over the linen-clothed youth's face. Her mouth had a faint smile. No need it. These 3 words were squeezed out from the linen-clothed youth's teeth. No. Ning suspiciously knit her brows and looked at him. Mr. Godly Doctor, the things I want to recite are the secrets of the medical families. Other people can't even listen to them, but I'm willing to recite them to Mr. Godly Doctor. Are you sure you don't need to? Her bright eyes glanced at the youth in hemp garments for a moment, causing the youth in hemp garments to grind his teeth again. With great difficulty, he resisted the urge to release the black chain to strangle her to death. I'm sure. There's no need, he said calmly. Only the heavens knew how much strength he used when he said those 3 words. Only the heavens knew how much he wanted to hear her recite. Chapter 1085. The linen-clothed youth was sure that if he continued to listen, he would never be able to climb out of this pit in his life. So he could only endure the pain. No matter how much he wanted to listen, he wouldn't listen. What he regretted now was why he invited her in, why he listened to her talk, and why he didn't kick her out of the valley in the first place. Miss, this mountain residence is simple and crude, there isn't much to entertain a guest with. Your status is high, so please leave. Go back to where you came from. My grass hut is too small, it can't hold a great Buddha like you. The linen-clothed youth waved his sleeve and the empty cup in front of Chen Ning fell to the ground as he spoke in a cold voice. He was actually mercilessly sending the guest off. Chen Ning couldn't help being stunned. It was hard for her to think of this clever plan. This linen-clothed youth had unknowingly fallen into her trap, and as long as she added a bit more strength, he would take the bait. Who would have thought that the fish that had bitten the bait would actually leave the hook? He wanted to chase her away? Was it that easy? Mr. Godly Doctor, what do you mean by that? I don't understand. She pretended to be confused. But in her heart, she was thinking that although this youth looked young, he was very strong. He had actually seen through her intentions and blocked the door ahead of time, not letting her open her mouth. I won't beat around the bush. This one already knows what this misintentions are. Since you know my 3 rules, then you don't have to say anything. Miss, I don't want to make it hard for you, so you should just leave. If you keep bothering me, then please forgive me for using some extreme methods to deal with you and your subordinates. The linen-clothed youth's finger moved and the chair he was sitting on turned around. With his back facing Chen Ning, he was not even willing to look at her. Chen Ning bit her lips. Seeing his determined expression, she knew that his words weren't just to scare her and that he really would do what he said. All right, then I'll be leaving. She stood up and without saying another word, she opened the bamboo curtain and walked out. When the linen-clothed youth saw that she was leaving, his heart let out a sigh of relief. It was like he had gotten rid of a large problem. But when he thought of the 2 medical books she had memorized, he felt an unbearable pain in his heart. He couldn't help turning around and opening his mouth, wanting to call her back. No, I definitely can't. This girl has grasped this weakness of mine and wants to lure me into the trap. I must not fall for it. He forcefully clenched his teeth, not letting himself make a sound. Only when he heard Chen Ning's footsteps gradually moving away did he finally relax and lean back in his chair. He felt his back was cold and he had already unknowingly started sweating. Master, the food is ready. We can invite the honored guest to come to eat. The bamboo curtain was lifted and Qing Feng walked in. When he saw that the seat opposite the teenager in sackcloth was empty, he opened his eyes wide in confusion. You the honored guest? Chen, she left. The corner of the youngster's mouth twitched. He thought to himself in relief, fortunately I left. If that girl had stayed here, he might have changed his mind. Left? Then what about the food prepared by the disciples? Mingyu was shocked and scratched her head. She's gone. Can't we eat the food ourselves? The youth in linen clothes couldn't help but glare at Mingyu. Chapter 1086. Chen Ning did not go too far. She brought Xiao Ru and Zhui Feng to stay in the Godly Physician Valley, looking at the flickering lights in the grass hut. From the open window she could see that there were 4 people eating in the grass hut. There was a wooden table filled with delicacies and she couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva. If that linen-clothed youth had not seen through her thoughts, then she, Xiao Ru and Zhui Feng would still be sitting at the table right now. They would have been able to taste Qing Feng and Mingyu's cooking and not be standing here eating the wind and dew. Young miss, there are still a few pastries here. Eat them to fill your stomach. Xiao Ru took out pastries from her bag and placed them in front of Chen Ning. Chen Ning nodded and gave the pastries to Xiao Ru and Zhui Feng. She also took a piece and slowly chewed it in her mouth. Her mind kept turning with thoughts. Young Miss Chen, how about we follow this subordinate's plan and kidnap this linen-clothed brat? This subordinate sees that Qing Feng and Mingyu do not know martial arts, so they definitely cannot stop this subordinate. Zhui Feng swallowed the pastries in a few bites and said this while wiping his mouth. Kidnapping people is easy, but treating them is hard. Are you confident that if you bring him to the capital, he will definitely treat Xiaobai? If he would rather die than submit, what are you prepared to do? Chen Ning rolled her eyes at Zhui Feng in a bad mood. Zhui Feng gritted his teeth and said, We'll bring him to the capital first. There will be a way for this brat to treat King Jing in. What way? The cow doesn't drink water. Are you prepared to cut off the cow's head and pour water in? Chen Ning was speechless. If the godly doctor doesn't want to treat him, you're going to kill him? This. Zhui Feng scratched his head and was speechless. Young miss, what do we do? Do we just wait here? This servant feels that the godly doctor has a straight face the entire day and hasn't even smiled. He's as cold and hard as a rock, so it must be hard to talk to him. In the grass hut, did he trouble the young miss? Xiao Ru asked with a face of worry. Chen Ning shook her head. She thought back to the itchy expression on the linen-clothed youth's face when she was reciting the medical manual, and her lips suddenly curled into a smile. She had already found this youth's weakness. Did he think that she would admit defeat if he kicked her out? Impossible. She wouldn't give up until she reached her goal. In the grass hut, Mingyu looked out the window and saw that Chen Ning and the other two were still standing in the Godly Physician Valley. They were very far away and there were only 3 blurry figures. The faint moonlight shined on them and their shadows were very long. "Master, that girl hasn't left yet," he said after a moment of hesitation. "Pa." The youth's chopsticks hit the back of his hand heavily and said coldly, "Get out if you don't want to eat." Mingyu grimaced in pain, his chopsticks dropped on the table, he picked them up and silently ate his rice, not daring to make a sound. Qing Feng was more perceptive than him and could already see that his master was not in a good mood, so he noticed that the 3 of them had not left the valley before Mingyu. However, he did not say a word and pretended like he did not see them. "Mingyu, what is this dish?" the youth in linen clothes suddenly asked. Mingyu followed the direction of the hemp-robed youth's chopsticks and replied, "Master, it's the cedar mushroom." "Ming, Chen Chen Feng, Ti Ming Ming Long, Chen Chen Xt of Go, Hyang Chen Chen Feng Ti of. Without my permission, who allowed you to touch my cedar mushrooms?" You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.